should be proud of him.
The Football Pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
For me, footwork has been something that's got me out of trouble on more than one occasion on and off the pitch, so I'll go with that one.
We can relate to that, we all can. We can all relate to that. Gotta be sharp around town.
Yeah. I live on the north side now, so I definitely do.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Welcome to our side, Hannah.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Oh, and stop it. No, we're not going to do the full 2 hours on how Arsenal are amazing and Mikel Arteta is a genius and how you were always on board that train. No, we've got to talk about the Republic of Ireland last night. Oh, hello. Sorry. Good morning to you all. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Ger and Eoin with you all the way through until 10 this morning. If you want to get in touch, 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or, of course, you can get us on the YouTube. You can leave a comment there. You can also tweet us at Off The Ball AM if you want to get involved. And it is Vera Pauw's world this morning and we're all just living in it.
Yeah, it really is. I guess it was interesting last night in the immediate aftermath of the game how Vera Pauw went and mentioned the 7-game losing streak that the team was on, and it's like, this is why we played all the good teams there, and this is why we lost a heap of games, and I think that's probably something that she's kept quite close to her chest over the last little while, how much maybe she was a little bit unhappy with the questions that were being asked of the team. And there's no better way to kind of prove everybody wrong than going to Finland and winning, and it is a huge win, and they can feel free to say that now, because it felt maybe in the build up to the game there was a little bit of a reluctance to state just how important this game was, because if you lose you're kind of out. We would have taken a draw as a thing, so to come away with the win is an absolutely sensational result.
Was it Richie who pointed out that Finland haven't lost a qualifier of any hue for 3 years, so like this is not a bad team, seriously ranked above us. In the last 3 games there's been an own goal against the second best team in the world. We've beaten Australia, who are one of the top 10 teams in the world, and now we've gone away from home and won. Granted, it was a backs to the wall performance, but there's enough there for the team to really feel confident about themselves and start believing. 2 home games coming up, and all of a sudden, are we going to the World Cup?
Well, it kind of feels like that, the same tone that we would have taken maybe the day after the men's team won in Vienna that night when James McLean scored that goal, where we're like, we're going to the World Cup. Now, of course, the playoff ended in complete disaster that time, but if this team makes it to the playoffs, which looks pretty good after last night, you'd like to hope that something on that level won't happen. Now, of course, there's still a possibility for best runner-up and all that to gain automatic qualification, and not getting hockeyed by Sweden last week would have helped. But I'm not sure. Are we starting to shift a little bit away from that, even away from the idea that not getting hockeyed by a team is a good result? Like you mentioned, the Australia result. This team now has got to a level where maybe there's a big shock coming not a big shock, a shock coming at some point down the line, where when maybe they play Sweden a second time, they could come close to actually taking a point off them. Who knows what it is, but it certainly seems that last night is a real punctuation on the step towards a real level of improvement over the last couple of years.
Well, chatting to Phil outside, he was making the point that the way the fixtures work out are actually quite good from an Ireland perspective. The last round of qualifiers, we've got Slovakia and Finland play Sweden again, so you would hope at that stage that there's still enough in the melting pot for Sweden to be putting out their full team, trying to beat their Scandinavian, are they Nordics?
Finland.
Yeah.
Finland are not Scandinavian, they're Nordic.
They're Nordic. Yeah. They're Nordic rivals. And what's the difference?
Well, it's just Denmark, Sweden and Norway are Scandinavia, and the rest are Nordic. I don't know, because that's
Finland
what
not get included.
They said when Denmark played Finland in the Euros. It was a fixture between the team that everybody thinks are Scandinavian but aren't, and the team that aren't Scandinavian but everybody thinks they are. So that's...
So the Danes aren't Scandinavian?
The Danes are Scandinavian, the
right.
Finns aren't.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good little geography lesson there for us all this morning.
Yeah.
The way the fixtures are working out, 2 home games next, opportunity to sell out the ground twice. It was a pretty good 24 hours for the FAI. Tickets go on sale for the visit of Ronaldo, and the stadium was sold out fairly quickly. And then the women's team are going in the same direction as the men's team at the moment.
And they needed the win last night, you suspect, because people want to watch a team that are going somewhere, literally to hopefully a World Cup, and that is something that's going to definitely boost sales for next month. So it's Slovakia on the 25th of November, Georgia on the 30th of November, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who were, putting that into their Google Calendar last night, if not even to go, but just to ensure that they've got the evening off to actually watch the games. I assume that's something that's after happening here. We've spoken a lot about the momentum that this team has had over the past year in particular, and last night just completely increases that. It's astonishing kind of how things have changed completely around this team over the last little while, and you're probably looking towards a possible sellout on those occasions. Now we don't know what the capacity is going to be. You'd assume it's going to be full houses come at the end of next month, but you can't really be sure about anything at the moment. Either way, they're in a really, really good position once everybody stays fit and there isn't any major change to that squad over the course of the next month. You'd be looking at a possible 6 points there. Slovakia, obviously, the tougher of the two games.
So I'm just reading off Wikipedia here. There's 9 groups in the UEFA qualifying. The World Cup is in New Zealand and Australia in 2023, so we'll have good support, you would expect, if we qualified.
Mm-hmm.
See the way I'm just penciling that in there. We can go and do the show from Australia and New Zealand for a month. So the 9 teams who win the groups automatically go through. The 9 runners-up advance to the playoffs. It's kind of a bit crazy. The 9 teams play 2 knockout rounds of single-leg matches with the best 3 runners-up entering into the second round. That doesn't make any sense, is it? The playoffs.
I followed none of that.
No, it's difficult. It's kind of, you need Kev here to do a Nations League.
I've just had it down as if Ireland finish second, they're in a playoff, and maybe there's a slight chance they actually manage to get automatic qualification. But I suspect that if you asked anybody in the squad right now, they're not thinking of that. They're just thinking of the one game at a time.
If you finish second, you've got a lot of different ways to qualify. At that stage, you enter this kind of weird repechage situation.
Okay.
Will I read it again?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay.
Completely screwed up.
It's 36 minutes past 7. My brain is moving slowly, but let's do it.
The 9 teams who are in the playoffs, they're the 9 runners-up from the 9 groups. The 9 teams play 2 knockout rounds of single-leg matches with the best 3 runners-up entering in the second round. So it's kind of
so you get a bye. Okay, I see.
It's kind of like what the everybody should be in the championship from the 32 counties after the league, which would then be completely pointless. What would the point of the league be if everybody's still in the championship? Sorry, did I digress a little bit? So that's in October 2022. Among the 3 second round playoff winners, the 2 teams with the best combined records in the group stage and second round playoffs will qualify for the Women's World Cup, while the team with the worst combined record will enter the Intercontinental playoffs. So you just have to... So you're going to have one... You're going to finish second in your group, you get a knockout match, and if you win that, you're basically nearly there.
Yeah. And I like the sound of an Intercontinental playoff match.
Yeah, who can
we've always fancied ourselves against non-European teams in any sport, in any level of football. So,
everybody feels a little bit brighter this morning and smarter, don't they? And I totally understand how that works. I really have no clue how that works.
No, neither do I. But you did as good a job as any person has ever done on the show of explaining a competition format.
Oh my goodness, that is tricky.
So book your tickets now, basically. For you can actually basically start when is the draw? Start googling dates for when is the draw for the 2023 World Cup, because we need to find that out and need to book our seats in the plane.
The playoffs will happen next October, so we've got a year of good quality football from the women's team to look forward to, and every match is going to matter. Ideally now they need 6 points from the next 2 games against Georgia and Slovakia. Slovakia not rubbish.
No.
And so therefore you wouldn't automatically assume that we're going to get that, but
a bit of PTSD from the last campaign as well, with Greece and Ukraine obviously causing Ireland a lot of heartbreak. I would say that Finland are better than both Greece and Ukraine, and Ireland have just gone and won in Finland. And that would suggest to me a pretty important staging point in where this team is going. And you have to say, in fairness, maybe there's been too much of an emphasis put on that 7-game losing streak, but you have to say that was important. Like there was some sort of muscle memory there last night when Ireland's backs were to the wall and they kind of knew what to do in that situation where the opposition were going to have 60 to 70% of the possession. They were going to have the lion's share of the half chances, I would say. I don't think there was as many massive opportunities as maybe we thought in the aftermath of the game, or at least how our emotions felt. I think late on in the dying stages there were definitely a few big opportunities, but certainly when Finland took a stranglehold of the game early on for the second quarter of the game, it didn't feel like that they'd created something huge. Now, of course, there was that moment that was offside and Courtney Brosnan makes this incredible save, which if there was VAR in the ground, it might have actually been allowed the goal might have stood had she not made that save. So there was a couple of moments like that, but I don't think it was as hairy as it might have been had they not had this learned experience of how to play against a top nation.
Yeah, so definite signs of progress, like all of the identifiable things that you would want from an Ireland team. Pressing, trying to get the ball back quickly when they don't have it. Technically very proficient, very athletic. I don't know. They were pretty good.
Yeah, and like the thing is, there's obviously some really important areas where you're kind of looking at the team and you're like, where can they get better? And certainly when it comes to like a number 9 or trying to just scoring more goals, as had been mentioned before the game, is going to be an area that Pau is still going to be targeting over the next little while. They seem to have a good bit off at this point when it comes to, as I say, backs to the wall and being able to defend resolutely. And it's kind of flies in the face of this argument, considering they scored twice last night. But adding goals to that will be the big task for them, especially when they come up against a Slovakia and a Georgia who might sit in, especially when they come to Dublin to play. What was really interesting last night was that it does seem that they do have a prototype for how to approach a better team, or a team that'll have more possession. And even those kind of opportunities that McCabe had, especially late on, where she just goes flying down the left flank when all that space had been left behind the opposition midfield, you're looking at that, and opposition teams would be a little bit terrified of Ireland on the break on that front. And even Pau was saying in the aftermath of the game that she'd played Denise O'Sullivan on the left. So all of a sudden you've got McCabe and O'Sullivan on the one flank when a team is chasing a goal, and that is a terrifying counter-attacking prospect. And then on the other flank you had Heather Payne, who is nutmegging opponents and absolutely running her lungs out to create opportunities as well. So an excellent counter-attacking team is what it seems Ireland are at the moment. That next piece now is when the other team are going to look to counter-attack against Ireland, Slovakia and Georgia. How can Ireland break them down and score goals from that perspective?
Yeah, we definitely need a little bit more finesse. And maybe it's not a 9, maybe it's a 10.
Yeah, possibly, actually.
Maybe Katie McCabe is a 10. I don't know. That was the constant debate. But actually, in the left wing-back position, or in that left forward position when we have the ball, she seems to be getting plenty of opportunities on the ball. So it's another couple of players that we need to get to that next level. Give us your thoughts. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Of course, you can get us at Off the Ball AM on Twitter as well. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. We're going to hear from Karen Duggan just after 8. We'll talk to Keith Wood at 8:15. We've got Davy Fitz joining us at 9 o'clock, and it was Mickey Quinn and Colm Collins, their response to what happened at Congress on Saturday from 9:30 this morning. We do want to talk about Manchester United. Obviously, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is still the manager, and it looks like he might be the manager for a little while. There's a possibility if they get spanked at the weekend, they'll pull the trigger then. But perhaps what they're doing is they're buying time all the way up until the next international break. That seems to be one of the theories that's out there at the moment. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Alex Ferguson happened to be at Manchester United yesterday on other business, totally separate business, unconnected to... He's just picking up the tickets for the next game, because that's what you always do. You always go the day that everybody's back in the office. You go to collect the tickets, because it's no other way that he can't just rock up. If somebody might say, who are you? You can't come in here. That's what happens. That's why he was at Old Trafford yesterday.
Yeah. A pre-planned appointment by all accounts, and then you see it reported somewhere that it was as a show of support for Solskjaer. So hard to know exactly what it is, but it is a bit weird that he's there on a day when the guy looks like he's about to lose his job.
Fair play to him though. Like you got to say he's got loyalty. This is his guy, and he is sticking with him to the bitter end, except when he's talking to Khabib.
Well, that is true. Ronaldo is the common denominator there in both conversations, isn't it? It was more to do with Ronaldo not being played from the start in that conversation with Khabib, and Ronaldo not pressing enough now. Ronaldo is just the issue. Maybe that's it. Maybe Kieran McKenna will go. Ronaldo will be sold, or just like his contract will be executed, and Solskjaer will somehow scurry away still as Manchester United boss beyond Christmas.
Enniskillen's obviously a hotbed of Gaelic football / coaching / soccer.
Yeah.
Listening to the football pod with Paddy and Andy last week, I didn't realise that Rory Gallagher was such a good soccer player as well. He was over in England, and there you go, Fermanagh.
There you go. And Kieran McKenna, the former GAA player by all accounts.
According to his Wikipedia this morning. Now,
okay.
Yeah.
It's by all accounts, indeed.
Bringing the standards of the crappy quiz to our journalism now. That's great. Ferguson, Ed Woodward and Richard Arnold all through this support behind Solskjaer, according to, this is the Guardian piece in the Irish Times. I think that everybody has little details now. The code of the dressing room has been broken somewhat. That details of, so they had a clear the air meeting, which it seems like most teams do after the Leicester game, which was, we thought, the worst and most humiliating things could get for Manchester United. But oh no. One squad member criticised some of his teammates for an apparent lack of motivation and training. Solskjaer asked the players to give their opinion. One player questioned Solskjaer's decision to give Harry Maguire the captaincy only 6 months after he joined from Leicester. So that's obviously somebody who was at the club before that. That's not, one player turned on Solskjaer over his team selection, grilling the Norwegian over why he was so reluctant to drop players who were performing poorly in matches. That player claimed Solskjaer and his staff were too resistant to reward those fringe players who were training well with a place in the starting 11. This isn't good that this is all coming out.
No, it's not. Like, it does come down though to kind of a question above that about what happens next with Manchester United. Like, do Manchester United fans, I wonder, actually trust the hierarchy at the club to get this next step right? And they've got a lot wrong over the years, so I'm not quite sure if it's actually going to happen. Like, it does seem that what's going to happen now is that there might actually be a little bit of damage done to maybe Solskjaer's reputation. Maybe not, but like, if he got sacked right now, it seems that a lot of Manchester United fans would turn around and be like, you know what, great player, legend. You know what, he brought us a certain distance and his time was just up. Whereas it feels the longer this goes on, the more maybe it's like, you know what, screw you, Ole. I'm getting so frustrated with what you're doing, and you no longer have a place in my heart. What's going to be interesting is that, like, that Manchester derby right before the international break could well be his last gig, because if they don't win that game, or if they get beaten soundly like they did against Liverpool in that game, then he is gone, because clearly what they're doing now is lining up Conte or lining up a replacement and just making sure that replacement is ready to start the very day after Solskjaer clears his office out. So I wouldn't be overly confident that actually his stay of execution is going to last much longer than these next 3 games. If he wins all 3 games, maybe that changes a little bit, but I
think if he wins all 3, he's staying. Absolutely.
You don't think this is just the hierarchy just making a bit of time while they get the next man up?
No, I think, but if you beat Man City,
tell Conte to go back home.
If you beat Man City, you get to wait and then pick your manager next summer, right? That's what happens.
I don't buy that at all.
City is like
not till next summer. It's until the next time there is an.
You're not going to sack him though.
Throw into chaos. So after the international break, so it's Watford first, then it's a Champions League fixture against Villarreal, then it's Chelsea and Arsenal in back-to-back fixtures. Like, there's every chance that those fixtures just turn into chaos as well after they beat Manchester City. Like, this has been the whole point of the last little while. It's been boom bust every second week.
Well, it hasn't. It has. It has
been this season.
It has busted, and then it has boomed for long enough for everybody to go, it's actually not that bad. It needs to give the end of the season. And that's, look, I don't think it's going to happen. There's no way that, are Spurs not watching this and going, so you stand here and you stand here, and if you just pass the ball to each other, that takes out 9/10 of the entire Manchester United team. Can you do that, lads?
Well, no. Well, the answer to that question is not definitely yes.
No, it's absolutely not. But if Harry Kane wants to seal his move to Manchester City, what better way to score a couple of goals against Man United and go, look, I could be doing this for you, lads. Come on.
Possibly, and we said it at the beginning of this run now. I never believed that they would be 2-0 down against Atalanta and lose 5-0 to Liverpool. But I think this day last week we were saying, this run, I was saying this time last week that United would win one of these games, that they would, and everything would be fine again. I would change that now to United could win one of the, United probably won't win any of these games, but if they do, it's no guarantee that everything is fine again, because they've just lost 5-0 to Liverpool.
Oh no, it's look, this is the end. It's just whether or not this is
the very end,
the beginning of the end, or it's over. And but make note, the fact that they didn't already pull the plug suggests one of two things. They're trying to find a manager, they're trying to do a deal in the background to make sure that somebody comes in straight away, and that there's not these 3 very important games, which will go a long way towards qualification for the latter stage of the Champions League and or qualification next season to the Champions League. So you don't want to snooker yourself there. If you are lining up Antonio Conte, you need to know exactly how much it's going to be, length of contract, who the backroom team is going to be, have those all in place so that there's a handover straight away. That's that would be good management, which we haven't always seen in terms of the plans around who's coming next and what the order of things is going to be. That's one aspect. The other aspect is that you actually think that you've given this guy a new contract and you're not going to overreact to a few bad results. I mean, that late winner that Jesse Lingard scored, the whole team were behind Solskjaer then. The 3-2 win just last week was a real sign that the team is behind him, and that anybody can go 2-0 down. Not everybody can win 3-2. So it's good marketing.
It's true what you say, that there is kind of an element of fight somewhere within this team. They haven't completely given up on him yet, but it probably shows even less fight when on the pitch they're working away, and maybe behind the scenes they're leaking stuff to their agents, who are subsequently leaking stuff to the press, and that feels just a little bit snaky, to be honest, and that's probably an even worse.
I have some sympathy with the players who might be telling their agent stuff, and the agents are using that to... It's not the players aren't leaking stuff to their agents; they're just having conversation with their mates, and the agents are being sneaky.
Yeah. I at the same time, it's all are these conversations just starting out of the blue all of a sudden? I guess you look at it from the agent standpoint. Why are they leaking now rather than before? And it's because they might think that their player needs a move in January because this Manchester United team aren't going to be a Champions League team next year, right? Obviously that's the motivation for the agent suddenly leaking now. But I would suggest that there's also just a little bit more coming out of the dressing room now than before. When the chips are down, there's been a lot of these players who are clearly leaking stuff to their agents more than before. So that would suggest that a lack of full unity off the pitch. But again, you say they came from 2-0 down to beat Atalanta, but you can't recover from that scoreline against Liverpool, especially when you got yourself into that position as a result of being an utter shambles on the pitch.
Doing the exact same things that you did against Atalanta. That was the thing. It's that you repeated the process. You picked the same team. You didn't make any changes. You gave everybody the opportunity to get tape on you. And funnily enough, Liverpool watched the tape and were like, oh, thanks very much. We'll be having that. Okay. Get in touch. You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream, or of course you can WhatsApp us. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Let's talk a little bit about rugby. There are several stories that we're going to get to with Keith Wood, South Africa not joining the Six Nations. Certainly it's not on the agenda at the moment. Not entirely sure why. The rationale seems to be about a global league, and we're moving towards that after the next World Cup, which may well be, it's the Nations League equivalent. They're watching what's happening with the Nations League and going, these matches seem to matter a bit more when there's actually a structure behind them.
Yeah, possibly. We obviously had that Nations Cup last year, didn't we, in the November internationals. This would be a Nations League that will be judged on July and November internationals. So your summer tour and your November tests would all be incorporated into this, which does make sense. I wonder, is it going to be the first step towards moving away from it? You'd wonder who is the Arsene Wenger in World Rugby who's going to come along and say, instead of doing that, you could just have the Rugby World Cup every second year and then allow players to have one long off season every second year, and everybody would be a lot healthier, and you would have these teams going toe to toe every second year rather than having this Nations League. Because the thing is, a global Nations League is essentially the World Cup. Well, it's not essentially the World Cup, but it has a more of a World Cup ring to it than football's Nations League, which is just European teams and the best teams playing the best teams. Whereas in this global Nations League, Ireland would play the All Blacks and they would play Tonga, I assume, and that would be the thing that you would maybe not.
Well, that's the thing.
Let's say Fiji.
One?
Let's say Fiji.
Is it just tier one? So
I don't know how if it would just be tier 1 or not, but it was obviously just tier 1 last year, and there was obviously COVID that came into it. But okay, so you take out the minnows out of it, but you still have Ireland playing the teams that would make up the games that matter in the pool stages of the World Cup. It would be more akin to it than the Football Nations League is.
Yeah.
So I wonder, could it actually be the first step towards, as I say, the Wenger of rugby coming out and saying, like, let's just do this every second year.
So elitist Sheahan believes, yes, go for it.
I think it's. I'm not sure. I think the November tests have definitely got a bit more about them than the summer tours for obvious reasons. It used to be after the Interpros, the season was bubbling along nicely. You'd have home games. I'm talking about this with Irish spectacles on, and you'd have cracking teams coming up to Dublin. So that was always a bit of a thing. The summer tour though, less so, especially on Lions ears, and it was just like, maybe though you look at it and you like, whenever Ireland go down to a tier 1 nation, like for example Australia in 2017, that felt relatively significant, but you just wonder, is it a little bit too hit and miss, and a bit more consistency about it, a few more games that matter really in a global league setup. Could that just be the natural end product of this? I think it probably is. I think the rugby calendar is a bit too convoluted.
It is. It absolutely is. It needs to be fixed. That was kind of the theme of our chats with Keith Wood, the State of the Union that we did in the middle of lockdown, and it turns out some of the stuff that he was saying is now beginning to come true. One of the other things in the paper today, in various papers, they're making a big deal out of the fact that the press release which announced the squad for the November internationals referenced the World Cup. Specifically, the head coach said, as we begin our countdown to the World Cup, which, in the past, maybe we wouldn't have talked about. We had Paul O'Connell in studio a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, we're all obsessed with the World Cup. It's like, we're not obsessed with the World Cup. It turns out he might not have been telling the full. That might not be the full picture. With that in mind, Eoin, the selection of the squad is coming in for some criticism in the papers today.
Yeah, Gordon Darcy in the Irish Times today said that the squad is an opportunity missed. He says that there are mixed messages going out to players with regards to form, that some players are included in form, and then for other players form has been ignored. And I think you can distill that argument straight down to the out half position. I think it's fair to say. I don't think he doesn't say that, Gordon Darcy, but I think we can pretty much take that from what he's saying. He said that the squad reminds him of an Eddie O'Sullivan type squad, which is from Gordon Darcy's perspective, that is a dig. I think you couldn't
get into an O'Sullivan squad and you couldn't get out of an O'Sullivan squad.
Well, yes, his approach obviously, and well, he says in the piece, Eddie O'Sullivan's priority during a window like this will be to win games, whereas Warren Gatlin's approach to a window like this would be championing youth and potential, and he feels that Andy Farrell's squad is a little bit more on the O'Sullivan side of philosophy than Gatlin's, or somebody who's prioritising youth. So I don't know.
Well, this window is different from the next window, but the next window is the Six Nations. Can you bloody bunch of young players? Maybe I don't know. Is there an element of Stephen Kenny talking about his contract in Farrell talking about the World Cup, right? It's like, it's a message to the Glazers in the IRFU that, like, we're planning for the Rugby World Cup. It's in 2 years' time. We need different outcomes than we've had ever in our history, or we could just repeat everything. And, like, I think what he's trying to do is build a winning culture, right? Because we didn't have it, and then and he was under pressure. People were talking about his job, and then all of a sudden all the conversations have stopped, right? I think for a bunch of different reasons those conversations have stopped.
England.
Yeah.
Like, that was a big result.
Well, and the quality of performances improved. Yeah. Or the execution improved. Because there have been bits in between that were quite good. And so now what he wants to do is, imagine if he wins these 3 games. Is that more important than just blooding some players for the sake of it and getting beaten 44-24 by the All Blacks?
I would say no at this point, because there was a real parallel here between playing the All Blacks in November and the last World Cup cycle.
Okay, I understand those parallels. It's just that if you were to suddenly go into a losing period because you're blooding loads of players, then what's the benefit of having a losing culture for the next 18 months?
But like, it's more nuanced than that. You could lose a couple of games, and Kieran Frawley could come into midfield, or maybe even stand in at number 10. I'm just mentioning him because he's the first name I see on the sheet here in the paper, and he could play amazing, and Ireland could still lose, and all of a sudden that player in that position is under pressure. Like, it's more nuanced than just it's a losing culture because we lost. It could be a very competitive culture that he fosters in a certain position because certain players are playing well. Like, the back row could be a perfect example of that. Midfield could be a perfect example of that. Of course, if you get hammered 60-0 by the All Blacks, chances are nobody's played well.
The likelihood is he's going to do that in the second row and in the back row.
Yeah.
It's just that we're all talking about the 10.
Yeah, like in fairness, Darcy is talking about
And maybe
midfields as beyond that, and I do think, like, I mean, the back row, he says that Jack O'Donoghue should be in the squad and he'd get a bit of game time. Like he mentions the likes of Tom Daly, currently the form inside centre in rugby, Stuart Moore, Jack Ainger. He mentions they should be tasked with presenting their credentials on the training paddock at the very least. He says, like mentions the likes of McCluskey and Beelum who've already been tried before, and saying that maybe it should have been a bit more creative with the names that were selected.
No, I don't know. It's like damned if you do and damned if you don't. He can't have a 50-man squad for this. He did have a 50-man squad just recently, and Carty wasn't in that. So I think probably at that stage he had nailed his colours to the mast. Look, maybe you need to change these things and be more adaptive. But right, you can give us your views on that. We'll talk with Keith Wood in about 20 minutes about that as well. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course, as I said, leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Pack show still to come. Davy Fitzgerald, Keith Wood, Karen Duggan is up next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Liverpool fans won't want to miss our latest Cadbury FC Roadshow. We're going behind the scenes at Anfield with legendary striker Robbie Fowler.
We'll also be joined by Liverpool captain and Irish international Niamh Fahey and former Liverpool midfielder and physio Richie Partridge.
It's all with thanks to Cadbury FC and their club partnerships, granting you behind the scenes access at the Premier League's biggest clubs.
Coming soon to OTB Sports social channels.
He's a Lion, he's a Grand Slam winner, he's Ireland's leading try scorer, and now you can hear him first, exclusively on the OTB Sports app.
One of my abiding memories is having my cut opened up again as I got hit by the trophy in coppers on the dance floor.
Join Brian O'Driscoll for the best insight and analysis this rugby season.
We haven't had the usual kind of grenades from Gats, that's gone, so we're creating them ourselves.
Get the jump on everyone else. Download the OTB Sports app and turn on notifications now.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's 8:01 this Wednesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM if you've just joined us. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're also very welcome along. It'd be great if you could subscribe. That way you'll find it easier to get our content, and we'll get to share it with more people as well. So in the meantime, let's talk about the Republic of Ireland and their win against Finland last night. I'm delighted to say Karen Duggan is with us. Karen, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, a very good morning. Great after that fantastic win yesterday. It's the one we called out for and the girls delivered.
Yeah, so how do we deliver? What was different about the performance last night from what we've seen kind of in the earlier part of Vera Pauw's reign?
The where we pressed them and the belief that when we pressed high that we could cause them damage. I think it's been damage limitation a little bit against those kind of teams before, where we've sat back and we've let them come on to us, and just sheer pressure has always won out in the end. Like, we can defend very, very well, but to ask a team to do that for 90 minutes is too much. But the fact that Katie was going in and intercepting balls that were maybe 50-50, that they were risky, and if she missed them, maybe we were a little bit exposed. But she believed that she could go and win them, and that kind of set the tone. And I think in the first 10 minutes, the link play between herself and Denise, our two best players, was fantastic. Heather Payne, tireless running. You can't say enough about Heather Payne's performance. But I think the fact that they stepped up so quickly in the match and put their footprint on it, it really spurred the girls on. And Finland looked absolutely shell-shocked after the first 10 minutes. They didn't expect Ireland to come out in the way they did, and it took them a very long time to react. When they reacted, they showed that, yeah, they are a decent team. They put us under an awful lot of pressure, but we were so resolute and had such belief at that point that it was kind of too late for them.
What was really interesting around that period as well, Karen, was when Finland started to take a stranglehold in their game. Ireland hadn't sat back at all. The pressing was still there. So what was happening in, say, the second quarter of the match that Finland did take a bit of a stranglehold, possession-wise anyway?
Finland are a technically better team. We've probably got more superstars in our team. When you look at it, they don't have a Katie McCabe who can go and do damage. They don't have that kind of world-class pair, but they're very, very solid all around the pitch. So the way we play as well with that three-man midfield and the amount of work that they have to get through, it's very, very tiring, and it's a big ask for us to press the back line for the whole game. So there were points where we had to drop off, but we limited them in a way that it was their centre half who was putting crosses in, and that's pretty easy for a three centre defenders to deal with. So yeah, they peppered the goal. They put a lot of crosses in the box, but it was from a distance that you could see it coming for an awful long time, and you'd be disappointed in your defenders if they weren't dealing with those balls.
What we're talking about, I suppose, is the emergence of the identity of the team, and it's been a while coming. That was kind of a lot of the criticism early on in Power's reign was, well, what are we actually trying to do? Who are we trying to be? And is it fair to say that this 3 games together, Australia, the Sweden game and this game, begins to show us what she's trying to do? Or is it still a little bit early? Are you still kind of a little bit jury out? You need to see a bit more in terms of the attacking style?
Yeah, I do need to see more in terms of the attacking style. If you look back at the stats, we were still probably dominated in terms of possession in those 3 games. Now, we gave a really, really good account of ourselves against some really top teams. Yesterday was different in terms of the fact that Ireland, when they got the ball, they took an extra touch and they played a little infield pass into their midfielders. I think the big thing for me yesterday was that they looked like they trusted each other a lot more. Like I said, when Katie bombed forward, she wasn't worrying about holding the defenders' hands. Like, there was still 4 defenders behind her, and that's what you need. You need everyone to step up and take responsibility. And too often we're looking at Katie and Denise to do it all by themselves, whereas yesterday they were doing it, but it was because they had trust in the people around them. Megan Connolly really stepped up as well. I was surprised that she was even allowed to take the free kick, because you'd expect Katie or maybe Lucy Quinn, who had scored that one against Australia, but it was in perfect territory for Megan. So for her to have the confidence to say, this is my free kick, that's fantastic to see, because she's a senior player in that team now. She's playing for Brighton week in, week out. So it's players like that we needed to step up, because we know what to expect from Katie and Denise. But we saw that. We saw Niamh Fahey put in a fantastic performance as well. And perhaps she came in for a bit of criticism for the Australia goal, the Sweden goal. But there was leaders all around the park, and that's what we needed. It can't just be, we're not a 2-man team. It has to be more than that if you're to get to the next level. And I think that was it. The performances and the leadership was spread throughout the team yesterday. So in terms of a style, it's still largely based on heart and determination and all the rest of it. And the biggest praise that was given yesterday was, oh my God, look at that work rate. People getting back at 90 minutes from Heather Payne tracking back and passing players out at that time, even given all the running she's done. So a lot of it is still based on that traditional hard work and dedication and all the rest of it. But the fact that there's belief now and we're doing it higher up the pitch, that's what's important. It's a step in the right direction towards forming an identity, I guess.
So I guess we're going to see more of that in the return fixtures against Sweden and Finland. And the question is then, against Slovakia and Georgia, when Ireland all of a sudden have the possession, what is the identity? I presume that is the missing piece in the jigsaw when we get an idea of this team.
It is, and it always has been. And we've kind of scraped by the likes of Slovakia in the past. And off the back of this result, I really hope that when we go into that Slovakia game, that's a 3-0 win. Like, that's the gap that we want to create between us and the teams behind us. So they're 7 places behind us. We just beat a team that were 7 or 8 places ahead of us, and that's the gap we need to start forming. That's the show of progression. Yesterday was a massive show of progression. But we don't want it to be a flash in the pan. Everyone will remember we played fantastically well in that European qualifier against the Ukraine, and we attacked, and everyone was like, this is the dawn of a new era. And then when the pressure came on and we had to go and get a result later to Ukraine away, we didn't have the bottle, I guess. We didn't have the professionalism to see it out. Things just kind of fell apart in that game. So it's seeing if the improvement we've seen in the last few games can continue on. And if that belief is not just a one-off thing, that's actually down to us playing fantastically well and making marked improvements in every area of the pitch, particularly in attack.
Well, Slovakia offers a good opportunity to see exactly where the progress has come from. I think you were in the team that beat Slovakia in the qualifiers in 2018, and that was, as you said, a scratchy enough game. It was a 2-1 win, and there was 3,500 people at it, and that was considered a great crowd at the time. So, like, if before a full house we put in a good performance and it's a routine victory, then that's a clear sign of progress. But if it's still a bit scratchy, then this success is going to come in bits and pieces, and it's not going to be a straight line.
Yeah, and there's an awful long way to go in this as well. You can't forget that everyone has to come back around twice, but getting the home win against Slovakia, and the crowds are growing, the attention is growing. We see there's pressure coming on when you have tweets from politicians and stuff coming in congratulating you. This team, it garners a lot of attention, and it takes it on pretty well, but it's a time now where the delivery is key, and one victory isn't enough. Consistency is key to that. And Slovakia are no pushovers. I mean, they only lost 1-0 to Sweden as well. We're lauding our performance against Sweden about a 1-0 loss, and Slovakia did the same, and they came away just with 1 goal deficit against Finland as well. So they're always a tricky side. They're very scrappy. I think that the game won't be a free-flowing game of football. They'll be more willing to put in tackles. They'll see themselves as the underdogs, so they'll scrap us in the way that we've scrapped teams in the past. And again, that's a different challenge for us to have to stand up to. I read a quote by Vera during the week applauding how disciplined we've been and the lack of fouls we gave away against Sweden. But sometimes you have to get into those things. I think if a midfielder had recognised in the Sweden game, okay, my centre-half's gone missing, my full-backs are gone, I need to give away a free and get a yellow card here. There's a time and a place for bringing out that scrappiness and throwing a leg in. And Slovakia could be that challenge that we have to step up and be that nasty team as well. So we talk about versatility and stuff as well. It's versatility and attitude of how we approach games, versatility in how we play, and it's versatility in how we react to teams who are going to treat us like we treat them.
The ambition of the team seems to be improving as well. I guess, I mean, we would be very hopeful that there will be a performance that is a bit more expansive in the home games than the ones that we've seen. It does seem as if we've built a really good style for those top teams, and the next evolution of that, as we see with all teams, is having more confidence technically, and that comes from winning as well. The other thing that was very clear was that there's a togetherness in the group, and I guess if you've been through the losing streak and the misfortunes that this team have been through, it either breaks you or it makes you. And it certainly seems like, you much have more insight into this, that they are a group that is quite together.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of credit to the girls themselves and how they get on as a team, because during that period of when they were losing all of those friendly games and we couldn't really see an identity, there was no real patterns of play, it would be very easy for them to sit in their rooms and say, oh, this isn't working and what's going on here. But they've stuck at it and they've stuck together even when they've had a lot of changes forced upon them, and we talked about inconsistencies before that. So it's very easy to let something like that weigh in on you, especially when they're getting a lot of media attention. They do have all of these sponsor deals coming in. It does add pressure. It's more things for Katie to have to deal with in terms of, she's rolled out for so much media, and for her to still be able to put in the performances that she's put in stands to her character. But it's a testament to the girls, because they have had a lot thrown at them, like you say, and those inconsistencies, that they don't let that get to them, that they're still there fighting for each other, first minute to 90th minute. And now it's, okay, we fight for each other, but now let's just start playing. Let's play, let's enjoy the way we play. And that has to come in the next 2 games, and that should come in the next 2 games against Slovakia and Georgia, where they can hopefully go out and enjoy themselves with a little bit less pressure and show us, yeah, we're a dogged team, we can grind out a result, but we can also go play. And that's what we need to compete at a higher level.
How big a loss will Eileen Gleeson be to the setup?
Eileen is massive because she's that Irish connection as well. She's a great character. She's very funny, and she's very, very intelligent. Like, in terms of the research that will have been done for these games, you can be damn sure that Eileen Gleeson had an awful lot to do with it, and making recommendations on how we snuff out the opposition threats. But as well as that, she's a very, very good coach, and her connection to the Irish game is palpable. And I'm always very wary of us losing that connection, because we're always saying, oh, everyone's going professional, it's fantastic, it's the best thing for the Irish team. But we have to feed into that, and we have to drip feed girls from the Women's National League into the Irish setup, and then they can go and get professional, and things have to be done the right way. So the fact that she was that connection to the Irish game, I think that's really important, and I hope that her successor has that same kind of connection to Ireland and to the girls in this country and their development, because the senior team, because we don't have a huge abundance of players, we do need to get some girls into the senior team to give them the exposure so that they can then get those professional contracts, as opposed to it being the opposite way around. So I think that her successor will have a big job in doing that and a big role in doing that. But I'm really, really happy for Eileen. I've worked under her for many years and she's a fantastic coach, and you won't find someone more dedicated to taking on a team. And I think Glasgow have gotten a really good person there. She will throw her all into that role as Glasgow manager, and she's going to help them go to the next step. They're top of the league, but apparently their performances haven't been as good as other years. But you can be sure that Eileen will research it and find a way to get the best out of that team too.
That piece around the connection between this team and the National League in Ireland, it does seem it's something that Vera Pauw has really worked on herself and holds in really high regard. Karen, I'm not sure if that's something new, but certainly listening to her over the last couple of weeks, she's not saying it's great that we've got loads of players in the WSL. There's very much a domestic focus from her perspective.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I do think that's still Eileen's influence. And I think it's the fact that Anya's had a good few games, and there's been some good games in the Women's National League as well. And obviously there's more exposure now, TG Carr coming on board and things like that. So again, I think that's why it's important that there's an Irish person in that setup who has the connection to the Irish League, because Vera, she's saying she's seeing the games and stuff, but she's not based in Ireland, and it's very different looking at something on screen and being there in person and seeing the influence someone can have off the ball and things like that, particularly in defensive or midfield positions. They're not the ones who are going to grab the headlines, but when you're there in person, you can kind of feel that. So having those representatives at those games is important to make sure that you're picking the right players. And for me, I was delighted to see Eoin Clancy in the squad for the senior setup. I know she didn't get on, and it takes away from the 19s maybe, but it shows that they are watching the league, because for me, she's been the standout young player of the league this year. She's really, really composed and plays with a lot of maturity in her game, and she's not going to be the person who's getting loads of goals, but she's a standout player when you are at those matches. So her inclusion kind of proved to me that people are paying attention to what's going on in the Women's National League.
So a slightly bigger picture question then about where we are at the moment. How well set up are we for success, and what needs to happen to make sure that one-off performances aren't just going to be our lot into the future, that we can actually build on this? And so when the Euros qualification rolls around, we're close to being top seeds, if not top seeds, or we certainly believe that we're going to be able to challenge the top seeds.
Do you mean with this current squad, or just
kind of with the game? Like, so to come out from, and to, like, what's the state of the game at the moment with respect to the pathway for players to make it to the national team and the quality of coaching that they're getting at the right levels?
Yeah, well, the pathway is there because we do have a domestic league that gets attention, and we have the 17s, 19s and senior set up, and they're really good, but we have to be conscious that they're an amateur setup and people can only give so much time and effort to those. So the one missing puzzle piece for me is that proper formulated, structured home-based sessions that happen consistently, that they're not happening once a month or once every 3 months or just before camp or things like that. So I think that it's not enough in Ireland for us to just leave it to the clubs for player development. We do have some underage structures, but I think that has to continue to up into mid-20s, because like I said before, women can mature later than men. It's not all done for you if you haven't made it by the time you're 17, 18, like maybe it is for guys. So I think that those, just one extra training session a week, even if it's just targeting the 19 to 23-year-olds, just not forgetting about that group of players, will ensure that there is a pipeline that are always kind of ready. And I'd have Vera feeding into those as well. If she wants to play 5-3-2 going forward, if that's going to be the identity, make sure that that's what's played in training, and just have a more holistic view of the opportunities that having more home-based sessions can bring, because you would have players who are up to speed, maybe not in terms of skill that the WSL players are, but in terms of their tactical awareness. Like, you can feed into that and then help them grow in terms of their ability when you have them in camp and they've got better players around them. So that's something I think needs to be really, really consistent. And particularly now, there's loads of time between now and the Euros to have that set up, and it takes not too much effort, not too much investment. And then in terms of the team, it's kind of more of the same, just belief in your ability going forward, confidence in how you play those games, and just doing it higher up the pitch. I think I think we're still too willing to drop back and grind things out. And against the really, really top opposition, the Swedens, they'll still create chances and things like that. So there's still work to be done on the pitch, but also off it, if we're to take a long-term view at it. And I think you're right. I think the Euros is the opportunity for us to have a full squad of players ready to take that next step. At the moment, I think we've got a few subs who can come on and can impact the game, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, but to have a full squad that if someone got suspended, you wouldn't be worried.
Yeah.
Jamie Finn was on 2 yellows now. Are we a little bit worried? Or Katie, we know her temperament. She's very, very passionate and she can get into things and she's very fouled a lot. And if she gets suspended, are we worried? So it's about creating not just a good 11, but a good 23, 24 that you can call on at any time.
All right, it's always easier to have these conversations after a win as well. So Karen, good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thanks a million. Bye.
Karen Duggan gave us thoughts on Ireland's 2-1 win last night. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, you can grab us on 0879 180 180, or you can leave a comment for us on the YouTube channel. Keith Wood is next, but I want to play you this. Colm Collins is the longest serving manager in Gaelic football at the moment. He's the special guest on episode 25 of the Football Pod. He talks Paddy and Andy through his coaching journey and his experience at Special Congress on Saturday. He's been the Clare manager since 2013, has brought them from Division 4 to the brink of Division 1 last year. The likes of Paddy Cassan, Alan Flynn and Mick Bowen have worked with him across those years. Here he is and what he looks for in a coach.
There's only two things I ever ask anybody that comes into Clare. Number one, that they're able to shut their mouths, that they're not blabbering about what's going on, and that they, that they have the ability to keep things in house. And the other thing is, a mindset, an open mindset, that they believe in growth and they believe that you can improve. And they're the only things that I ask anybody. And the other thing is, if you take somebody in and he's a brilliant S&C coach, don't interfere with him. Let him do his job, and then. Same thing with football coaching. Like we've been very fortunate, and one thing that happened to me by complete accident, Andy, is that we started off with Paddy Cassan, and Paddy of his own accord left after a year. He was a great coach, and then we got the next coach came in, and so on, and they, so that I think that it worked in our favour that we didn't have coaches for a long time. No. Obviously, they couldn't get on with the oak and charge.
Yeah, you tried to say that to Colin. We weren't going to stop you there.
But it worked. It was a complete accident, but it worked in our favour in the sense that lads were hearing a new voice every couple of years, and they really liked that. The players liked that, and that worked in our favour. But it wasn't part of the master plan. No, it wasn't.
Yeah, it's very interesting stuff from Colm Collins on this week's episode of the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy. It's available exclusively every Tuesday on the OTB SPORTS app, and it'll still be available obviously everywhere else a little bit later on today. It is 22 minutes past 8. Keith Wood is with us this morning. Keith, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing, Joe? Or Ger, how are you?
We're going to talk about the Ireland squad in a moment, but I did want to get your thoughts on Connacht in particular, because it was you hope it's a breakthrough win for them against Ulster. It felt like they were robbed a bit of the breakthrough win against Munster, and look, maybe they shouldn't have been in a position where the refereeing decision goes against them and that costs them the game. That's sport. That's going to happen. But they did back it up with a big performance in a high pressure situation, which speaks very highly of what's going on there. What's your impression so far of where they are at the moment?
Well, we're against Munster. Actually, they didn't play to the standards that they showed at the weekend, and no, Munster were worse, and yet Munster managed to get the win, and I think we're very fortuitous in getting that win. But it's hard to see at times because they have a smaller squad, or not as deep with as many experienced players, and yet when you see a performance like they had at the weekend, now I still think Ulster were pretty poor, and I thought they were made to look poor as well at the same time. But Connacht played with an incredible level of aggression, like really, really on the edge, but with a very good discipline. And I thought they played really well. I thought the pressure they put on all the time, I thought their handling, like it's a joy actually to watch Connacht forwards run onto the ball, look to offload. If you were looking for a difference between a lot of the teams that played at the weekend, you would see forwards with the ball in two hands. Now, it isn't in two hands all the time, and especially when supporters watch it, they'd say, well, the one-handed pass is brilliant and the little offload, but it's two hands going into contact and getting yourself in a position where you're under full level of control to give that offload with one hand is what happens. And I don't know, I look, every time I watch Connacht play, I think they just play with a fantastic energy. So I think they've made a decent step forward. I think an awful lot comes down to injury and to how often those players can play at that level of intensity. It does seem as if they're able to get up for the interprovincial matches because they know that is the big shop window for them. But I thought they were fantastic, and I thought they did an absolute number on Ulster's backs as much as anything else, because Ulster kept going deeper and deeper and deeper and shoveled the ball and didn't show any incisive intent during the game, and an awful lot of that was down to the pressure that they were under.
It's interesting about how the Interpros should be the shop window, and yet there's debate about the Ireland squad and it not actually recognising the form of some players. I think the comparison by Gordon Darcy today is it's an Eddie O'Sullivan-esque squad. I don't want to misquote him here, Eoin.
I could get the exact. I'll get a few in a moment, but the exact quote. But it does, Keith. He says it does have the look of an Eddie O'Sullivan squad, where getting a result in the November test is clearly the most important thing, rather than the idea of actually progressing. Here's the quote. If Gatland championed youth and potential, O'Sullivan's priority is winning games, and personnel reflected that approach. Andy Farrell's squad feels a bit like that, familiar at first glance and then a little underwhelming. Did you get the same impression?
I think that's a bit harsh on Eddie, because that may have been true of Eddie at the end of his term, but not at the start. He was very willing to give youth the chance at the start, and I think when he took over in 2001, 2002, that was the start actually of Gordon Darcy coming back into the squad, because he'd been out of it for a long time. He hadn't been picked. And there is an element of getting players through the door. There's also an element of, we had this conversation last week, I think, about picking players on form. Teams aren't picked on form of what's happened in the previous 2 or 3 weeks. It's also against who they're playing. It's also for what other players have done in time. It's also about giving youth a chance at different stages. It's no point giving 15 of them a chance, because you can ruin a lot of players very quickly. I think as a team, Connacht play incredibly well, and it's whether the individual players are holding up to a higher standard than some of the players that have been played. And yet, with the level of aggression that was shown by Daly in the centre, Sammy Arnold has done incredibly well since moving from Munster. It's hard to say how many should be picked, actually. Though we were talking last week about Carty playing the week before, and against Munster, people would say, well, he was obviously the international player on the field. I didn't think either of them played at an international standard. That was my read on it. Whereas Carty was in control almost entirely of the game and totally outplayed Burns at 10. So I do think he's very unlucky not to be in the squad.
Is there, because this is the debate, right? And I see both sides of this. I definitely see, if you're Andy Farrell, you've got a confidence in the team at the moment that has come from the winning run that you're on. But he has got some new players through over the summer who are still in the squad. The list of players, Balakoon, Byrne, Coombs, James Hume, Tom O'Toole and Nick Timoney are all back in the squad after being in the summertime and getting their first cap. So that the whole notion that we're not really bringing through new players isn't quite true. I also see the benefit of picking a little bit on form to give everybody a bit of a jolt, and that's the one bit that I'm not quite sure of with Carty. It's like, if you're playing that well at the moment, if you stick him in the squad, even just put him on the bench for the Argentina game or put him on the bench for the Japan game, like, that's a sign to everybody that you can get back in the squad, that the door's not shut to you. Now, there was a 50-man squad in September. Carty wasn't in that. that was probably an indication that he wasn't in the coach's thoughts. If you can't make the 50-man squad, you're unlikely to make the 36-man squad. Where do you stand on that whole kind of keeping the open door to make sure everybody is always on their toes versus the confidence of knowing 2 bad performances, that's not the end of your international career?
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the big conundrums that is in Irish rugby at the moment, in that your incumbent is 36 years of age and you're looking for the next guys to be in, and they should be sort of 26, 27, 28, and they tend to be younger than that still. So that makes it kind of hard, and we've been unfortunate, I think, with Carberry having picked up as many injuries. They've tried Ross Byrne in that period of time. Ross Byrne is an incredibly safe pair of hands, and I think Ireland could pick him at any stage and know that he would do a job in the manner in which he plays, but not in the manner in which I think Ireland would like to progress. For that, and we put this again, but the ceiling for Harry Byrne seems to be high, but we haven't seen a huge amount from it. The ceiling for Joey Carberry is very high, but he's been injured and has been off the mark. So I'm hoping that bringing him back into Irish camp frees them up an awful lot. And that is, we're like, the difference being we are seeing Connacht play at a fast pace with a 10 running onto the ball. And so we are seeing Jack Carty play very well. Now, when he sits deep and kicks well, he kicked really well the other day. I think it's really tough for him. Over any other player that we're talking about, it's very tough that he isn't in there. But the coaches always make a decision on it. I think in relation to every other player that they talk about, people who tend to argue on provincial grounds, not on anything else. There's a huge amount of people get so coloured in their own players that's what they want to see and play on the field, and it's understandable as well, you know. But for me, I think Carty is like that. He wasn't in the 50 just means he's out of thoughts. But if he continues to play like this, he has to become into the thoughts. So, is there a consequence of that for people on the outside? So Jack O'Donoghue, who's not in the squad, in fairness to Darcy, he mentions him today. I guess what I'm asking is, do people lose heart if you're not in the squad, that you can't get into the squad even when you're playing at the best level of your career? And does that have a knock-on impact for people being a little bit complacent who are in the squad? I don't think it puts any level of complacency. I think the level of pressure to play is very high, always. Okay. That would be my read on it. I said the same about Jack O'Donoghue last week. I thought he's been playing really well. He was poor at the weekend, and he made a lot of errors. And whether that's down from a dropping in confidence because he didn't get pushed into the squad or whatever, how do you know about things like that? But that, you see, you're going to have bad games and off games. That's why you don't just pick on forms. If somebody plays badly, you don't. I thought Peter Mahoney played better at the weekend, but selection comes down to the views of not just one man, because they'll say there's a few people who pick it, but it's one guy who's in charge of the whole lot, who wants to play in a particular fashion. That's what he's employed to do. That's what the expectation is. And the RFU expect him to win matches. Now, I think when we looking at this, and from a lifetime of underachievement at World Cups, and I played in 3 of them and we didn't get past a quarter-final, I'd like to see us further up that table. I think we need to be getting to semi-finals. We need to get to a final. And at times, circumstances or injuries or whatever else has never given us that route for the last period of time. I thought we peaked in 2018, and I thought we tried to keep a style of play that had worked, and tried to keep it all the way to the end of a World Cup, and everybody found us out at that stage and we got dismantled. And that's what happened in the last one. I hope that there's enough of change in the next 6 or 9 months so that the players that we bring to the World Cup are very fresh when they get there and are good enough and have enough experience when they do get there. And for that, we need to be bringing extra players in and through. And you mentioned 4 or 5 that have come in from the summer. You'd like to still see those go. You need to try and get the right balance once you get to a World Cup. And for me, in the last World Cup, I think we had too many players over 30. So, but you're looking for other players to play well. And, I don't know that there's people putting their hand up saying, yeah, I need to have the number 10 jersey as an example. I think there's a lot of players in the back row who could play for Ireland and do a really good job. But at 10, we seem to have Johnny Sexton, who is still playing incredibly well. But the game is changing a lot from what it was, and it needs to be closer to the gain line. That's what seems to happen with every team, with the exception of South Africa.
At what point did you and your team start talking about the World Cup during the 3 World Cups that you went to? Is 2 years out about the right time? Because it seems that this Ireland camp is starting to mention the importance of the World Cup when it comes to these squad selections.
Yeah, I don't know that we did necessarily at that stage. I think about a year out, you'd be talking about it more. I mean, there is a cycle, but all these big tournaments are huge in their own right. And look, we've said this a few times, but the IRFU is funded by what it does in the internationals. That is the basis of all the money that comes into the game. In some of the other countries, it comes in from private entities or people, like in France or in England. But in Ireland, it comes 80% of it comes through the international window. That's where all the money for the game goes. That is the quandary that the IRFU is permanently in. Can it give you the chance, or like it still has to fund itself and be in a really strong position? And that's the balancing act that is always there and is always up for discussion. Fans rarely like to see it in that fashion, but still the thing has to be funded, and the IRFU has always been well funded. Now it's taken a huge hit by COVID, and I think that makes this almost more important for them to do well. But it's how can you manage and balance that together for us to get the most out of the team and still get the wins, and I think that's something that becomes important.
Okay. Keith, it's that time of the year where we ask everybody for what the depth chart is. Is it fairly obvious who our number one hooker is now, given that there was lines in and out for Ronan Kelleher and he's playing really well, that actually what we should do now is decide you're our number one guy, and no matter what, even if you cough up a few throws, we're going to have to persist with this because we know you're our best player? Or do you have to make him win the jersey to the point where you keep him on his toes? How does that work?
Well, I think you need to make everybody win their jersey. I think Kelleher has shown has been pretty. He's burst onto the scene. He has done very, very well. He's had a few bad throws. That's part of it, and you have to learn your way through it. And you're coming up against oppositions that you'd never have come up before, who defend very differently. You need to build on a variety of throws that you have. I think at times he throws incredibly hard and flat, and sometimes an arc would be better. And that's something that you learn over time, that you need to throw differently. I think Sheahan as well is an absolute diamond that we have in the team. He's a big, huge kind of agricultural sort of player. You know, he's 6'2.5" or 6'3". He's heavy. He's a good ball carrier. I think the two of those are the guys that will be carrying the torch for the next period of time. So in the meantime, I think you can have Herring on the bench. He throws incredibly well. He's a very safe pair of hands. But our future are in the two Leinster hookers.
It's funny that they put Sheahan straight into the Ireland squad as well at this stage. It's like, okay, we know what the future is here. We're deciding that, and you've got Herring. So you've got a nice mix of an incumbent experience and somebody who we don't know what the ceiling could be. That's so in order. Is it Kelleher, Herring, Sheahan? Is that how that works for you as the depth chart?
I think it is, but I don't think it'll stay that way for very long. I think Sheahan will start pushing for the number one slot, not just the number two slot. I think the two of those. I thought Kelleher was really exciting to see him come on the scene, but then to have somebody else come on immediately after him is fantastic. And I just think that they look like the standout players, but they also look like they have the size, the ball handling, everything else that goes with it. It's the technicalities under pressure are where they're shown up. It's actually where Herring has done very well. He's not a particularly big guy. He is not the most effective around the field, but he's technically very good. And if I was the two younger hookers, I would be learning a huge amount from Herring over every single camp that they go together and trying to mop up everything that they can. And I'm sure Herring would be up for that, even though it might go against him. But that's the nature of a team, and that's what's required, actually. But I think those guys are where the game is going. So, I think Sheahan in particular, he's just rough yet, you know what I mean? But there is huge potential for him.
It's coming for sure. So we have the miracle of Cian Healy's slide over from one side to the other at the front of the scrum. I don't think I've spoken to you about this just yet, but
no.
This is remarkable, right? This is like a truly remarkable achievement for. We probably are kind of unaware of the difficulties of going from loose head to tight head, but at this stage of his career to be able to pull this off, maybe you don't think it's remarkable, but certainly it seems from the outside to be one of those things where we're like, sure, look, what's the big deal? But actually it's a massive difference.
It's a huge difference, actually. And I remember a long time ago, Peter Clohessy went from, on the opposite side, he went from tight head to loose head. And in the match, he came on off a bench. He had his feet in the tight head position, so the ball couldn't be put into the scrum because. And when I was giving out to him, as you can imagine, with bad language on a 5 metre scrum against Australia, he said, "But this is where I always have my legs." But he hadn't always played loose head, so it isn't even as simple as where your legs are. It's at loose head, there's a lot of there's a huge amount of movement, and you are having to stop a tight head going in, but your left shoulder is always free, so there's maneuverability. When you move across into tight head, you have little to none. I mean, you're locked into the scrum. It's quite frightening. And I played there once in a European Cup game, and it's not something I'd ever like to have back, I can tell you. But it's an incredible thing to be able to do. But it also shows the depth of skill that he has, but the depth of power he has, because you have to lock the scrum. So you have to be able to scrummage low, as in with your hips low. You have to have that flexibility to do it. I think it is an extraordinary ask, actually.
And look, I don't know. It doesn't have a designation beside him in the squad announcement. Tom O'Toole is in the squad as well, so they're obviously giving themselves options. Healy becomes incredibly valuable as a squad member and as a member of the playing staff then, because he can do these two jobs, and certainly from his perspective it's going to extend his career. What's your depth chart when it comes to the front row at the moment in the two prop positions? Tyke Furlong's a nailed on starter. Who would you have immediately behind him, and is Andrew Porter automatically your starting loose head at the moment?
I don't know if Andrew Porter is the starting loose head. For me, that's an uncomfortable one at the moment, because tight head is and has consistently been the hardest position to tie down, and we ended up with two tight heads that gave a huge sense of comfort for me when we're under pressure, that you can put on another tight head that is fantastic. And I know everybody wants to get the best players on the field at once, but actually in the front row in particular, I'm not that certain about that. I do think that you need to have, if you can replace like with like, you put yourself into a very strong position. So I'm uncertain on the subs and the tight head side. I genuinely felt comfortable at when Porter was at tight head, but I do understand that maybe it's mitigating for a fact of when Cian Healy hangs up the boots, that's the reason to move him across. But yeah, I'm uncertain, actually. I really am.
So if you were picking the Ireland team at the moment, who would your starting loose head be? Because Kilcoyne's in the squad and Healy's in the squad, but he hasn't played club rugby there this year. Porter's in the squad.
I'd go for Kilcoyne. I still think we need to get an awful lot more out of him, and I think if he had a run of games starting, I think we could get an awful lot more out of him.
It's funny, he's got 45 caps. Furlong has 49 caps, so he's been around, but too many of them have been bench caps or not at the key points where he's had a bit of fitness behind him.
Yeah, I think they've been short caps for a lot of them, and that happens sometimes. And sometimes you just need to be given the starting nod and to see how you can progress in that. He's incredibly dynamic, and whether his impact is best to come off the bench or it's to be there at the start, I think I'd like to see him start now for a while and see what would happen, see what we can get out of him, because to have that sense of power that he can display, if he can make certain that there's that level of control in the scrum at the same time, I think that's something Ireland need to see.
Okay. Are you optimistic ahead of these 3 tests?
I am optimistic. I actually think we'll do pretty well. I'm nervous about New Zealand, and I'm nervous because they've had a very, very tough year and tough season and have played incredible rugby and also got beaten by South Africa, which they bristle very heavily with always. And so for me, I'm thinking that they're on a proper build for the World Cup. I think they've blooded a lot of players in the last 12 months. They have a coaching ticket that has changed over the last couple of years. They've extended it. They've given the confidence in Foster to say that you're going to go to the World Cup. Now he can attack from here, but those players have played a huge amount of rugby together this year. Ireland have not. And that's, for me, that's the one issue that we might have. So we could come a cropper there.
All right. Keith, great to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads.
Keith Wood giving us his thoughts there. We have a ton of NFL goodness coming your way, by the way, this week with the return of OTB's Club Gridiron. It'll have highlights from the Snap, reports from games, early bird tickets to events and much more besides. Sign up now at otbsports.com/Club Gridiron. At 8:45 we're saying good morning to John Duggan. John, good morning to you.
Jerry and Eoin, how are we doing?
Very well. What's going on?
Well, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer set to get a stay of execution to manage Manchester United away to Tottenham in the Premier League on Saturday. They've Atalanta next week away in the Champions League, and then Manchester City come to Old Trafford the weekend after this. So he's not going yet, but you'd have to think that if results don't drastically improve and there's a stability that comes into the team and their performances, the writing could be on the wall.
So do you think they're just buying time to the international break to put a new manager and a new management team in place and decide whether or not they want to go steady with somebody like Antonio Conte, who's going to be, amazing but difficult? Or do you think they actually want to give Solskjaer another 3 weeks to try and turn this around?
I don't think they want to get rid of Solskjaer because they made a commitment in the summer to him until 2024 with Mike Phelan and other people at the club. That's the first thing. I don't think they wanted to rip this up unless it's absolutely untenable. Now, they did lose 6-1 to Spurs last season, I remember last October, but Anthony Martial was sent off 28 minutes into that game. No comparison to what we saw on Sunday. That was Germany-Brazil, lads. It was an absolute shambles, an absolute disaster, I thought. One of those landmark days in football, to the extent where you have the Liverpool fans, very funnily, I thought, singing to Casey and the Sunshine Band, Ollie's at the wheel.
At the wheel.
I watched it about a million times. It was very funny. Yeah, so even you've got it down pat. So I don't think you can blame the Glazers this time. I just think there's so many issues.
Well, I mean, you can if you want to. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think in this instance, look, obviously they appointed him, and Joe Glazer is the man who makes the calls. But there are just so many issues now at the club, and I think Ronaldo. It's becoming clear that Ronaldo's acquisition of Man United is going to backfire because he's not mobile enough to fit effectively into a unit, and he's too big to drop. It's too big to fail.
Well, so that's he probably isn't too big to drop, except that they dropped him. And it didn't work out. Like, you had the Ferguson Khabib thing, which became a story.
Yeah.
But actually, he hadn't picked Solskjaer for that day, right? Solskjaer hadn't picked Ronaldo for the day. Like, and if he just persisted with that, and if he could turn Ronaldo into a sub, imagine what the atmosphere would be like when it's 1-0 with 25
How
minutes
will Ronaldo react to that in the dressing room?
I don't know. I mean, someone needed to have that conversation before he arrived.
But it's all symptomatic of the fact that Solskjaer doesn't seem to be a man who has control of what's going on there. Pogba's now gone into one of his sulks. We're going to have 1,000 stories now about Pogba wanting to leave Old Trafford. Bruno Fernandes is not sparkling the way he was. There doesn't seem to be any midfield. Tactically, they're all over the shop. to me, it seems like an absolute mess. And you need an Antonio Conte to go in there and sort it out, I think.
Should the Glazers have seen this coming, John, is the question. Could they have acted a bit swifter maybe in the summer? Would it have been too brutal in the summer to get rid?
Well, they have improved their league position, and they did finish second. It was kind of a Pyrrhic second, I thought, last season. They did get to a European final. They didn't make a mess of it. But I suppose you would have to think that we were going to give Solskjaer a chance with 3 big signings. Like, Jadon Sancho has made no impact.
And they're ripping the piss out of him in Spain. Did you see in Germany? They've got him dressed up as the new James Bond 007, 0 goals, 0 assists, 7 appearances, and they're just laughing.
Varane hasn't played enough really, and Ronaldo obviously. Like, remember Cavani last season was having at times an impact. I just think it is a bit of a Roy Keane thing that this is Manchester United. But I think if you're one of the biggest clubs in the world, you have to have standards from top to bottom. I think they're galaxies away from that. And I know he's a loved and revered figure, Solskjaer, but they're just, you have all these stories about the coaching not being good enough, and everybody's probably spinning their line. I just don't think it should equate with what Man United should be all about.
Could they just go 4-4-2? Do they have the personnel for that? Could they just go 4-4-2, old school, for a couple of weeks and play Cavani up front with Ronaldo?
Ronaldo, who's your left winger? Sancho on the right? Rashford on the left?
Yeah.
And your midfield two being Pogba and someone else, or Pogba's gone out at this point to see we're thinking McTominay and Fred in a 4-4-2?
That's what it is, isn't it?
That would be Bruno and just play Bruno and Pogba and Sancho and Rashford and Cavani and Ronaldo.
Well, they tried that against Leicester, and then the gaps between,
it hasn't worked.
It was like the phalanx, something from the ancient Greece. So look, I don't know what's going to happen. Interesting to see Phil Neville coming out. We live in an era where it's seen as quite normal to ask people to be sacked, which I find absolutely incredible. If you were in any other workplace and you walked into a shop and you said, I want you to be sacked, I think you would be reported to the police.
Yes, Phil, and you got paid the same as the people who work in shops. Oh no, wait, that's not what happens in this. Poor Phil.
How are Inter Miami doing?
Solskjaer is on 200,000 a week. Look, if I was on that, I'd be coming in here probably half the time. I'd be having a briefcase just full of dollars, and then after OTB AM, I'd be on my plane to Vegas, and I'd come back the following week.
Phil is the Danny DeVito twin, clearly, if they were twins.
I don't really get that.
Arnold Schwarzenegger twins, Danny DeVito.
Oh, movie. Vague, like 1980s thing.
Oh, yeah, it's classic.
Oh, it's a good reference, though.
I don't get it. I need to go back and watch it.
It always works. So basically, they're twins, they split the embryo, and one of them is this perfect human being, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the other one's Danny DeVito.
Who's perfect in his own ways, of course, but in a
great actor,
level way.
Great actor. From Mama from the Train.
He's, of course, in no danger of being the shopkeeper that's going to have people angrily walking in and telling him he's sacked because they've just beaten Cincinnati 5-1 at the weekend.
Oh, wow.
Gonzalo Higuain with 2 goals.
I mean, he's got the best.
It sounds like an alternative universe, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so when is this going to happen, John?
I'd say after the Man City game. But it's either going to happen then or it's not going to happen at all, and we're just going to trundle along with this.
There are various theories out there that Man City are going to take it easy on Manchester United because they want to try and keep Solskjaer in the job for as long as possible. But again, it was the point we were making with Mark Lawrenson last week. This is the moment where you drag them into the deep water and you drown them. That's what you're doing if you're the opposition. You're setting off as many bombs at Old Trafford as you possibly can to keep them in the constant state of, oh, new manager, should he stay, should he go? That's what Klopp did at the weekend. You would hope that's what Guardiola will try and do.
There won't be any mercy. Remember that League Cup game last season? There won't be any mercy about a ball from Guardiola the way they've been playing. Not at all.
Okay. All right, what else is going on?
I don't know if you want my opinion on this GA thing at the weekend or not, but I suppose I might as well give it.
We do, come on.
I'm angry about this because I really do think this is a missed opportunity to get something in there and then tweak it. And I feel that there's a selfishness, and everybody's got their own area and everybody has their own integrity around their own area. But I do think there was a selfishness in terms of the provincial councils protecting what they're invested in. And I feel that we're going to be showcasing a bad product next year when it comes to Gaelic football. And I think that I'm not seeing really any kind of accountability for that. And when I'm looking at the votes, first of all, secret ballot, that's not good enough. They needed 16 more votes to get to 60%. Even with 8 of the Ulster counties against, Galway, Mayo and Kerry probably all against. We don't know the vote, this is the thing. Why are people afraid of a transparent vote? So we're going to be showcasing a bad product next year. People can point to the fact that Meath could beat Dublin in the Leinster final. It could happen. It's only happened once that Meath have beaten Dublin since 2005 in Leinster. But what about Wicklow? What about Longford? What about Louth?
They don't count.
What about them?
No one cares about them.
So, there is a selfish...
The message to those players is, we don't care about you. That's the message that was pushed out loud and clear at the weekend. Instead of this change, no change is what's happening. So we'll see.
There is a selfishness there which is going to result in a bad product and people watching other sports next year. And the Gaelic Games landscape will be dominated by hurling because the season is over in July. So effectively people will only tune in, and you can't blame them for only tuning in when it gets interesting, which is probably around quarter-final, semi-final stage. That is not good enough. And I don't see any accountability for it. And like, if people wanted to vote against certain merits in Proposal B, and that's fair enough. But we need to therefore see an urgency now to get something on the table for February for Congress, because otherwise we're into another 10 years of committee. I think, as you pointed out last week, the Football Review Committee was 2013. And this is just not good enough to have these competitions which are not fit for purpose. You can have your Tipperaries and Cavans, but Tipperary took them 85 years to win a Munster title.
They won a COVID championship in winter. So it was a remarkable achievement in a completely unusual part of the year. Like, the weather is a great equaliser when it comes particularly to invasion sports like Gaelic football. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen again. We're not going to see Division 4 teams winning those provincial titles again. And the thing is, right, what Tipperary supporters celebrated that day was the winning of the trophy, not the fact that they then won the right to go and get hockeyed by Mayo in the semi-final. And likewise with Cavan, it was like, oh, well, we'll go up to Dublin, we'll give it our best against the Dubs and Croker. And, you know, fair enough. Was it double scores at half-time? I think it was 14-7. What Cavan were celebrating was a title, a cup, a trophy.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with the fact that they were then through to the All-Ireland semi-finals.
Well, we'll see how the Tailteann Cup goes, but as I've said before, and look, it's a different argument at this stage, whether you have Division 2, 3 and 4 trophies, and I think that should be the way. But it's just really, really disappointing. And as you said in your tweet, it's like Chinatown. And as Eoin said yesterday, it's 50.5% now. There'll be a lot of people wanting to get down to 40 and 30%. And that, to me, is not in any way cognizant of the fact that the players here need to be given a better deal, and also the public. Because, you know, I love Gaelic football, and there's so many people out there who love Gaelic football that are passionate about this being a better product than it is. And next year, we're throwing away the year.
And who knows for how long after that as well. John, good stuff. Thanks for that. John Duggan giving us his thoughts there this morning at 8:56. You can read more from John on the OTB Sports app, which is available to download. You can just search OTB Sports in the App Store. It is 8:55. We're going to be, 8:57. We're going to be talking with Davy Fitzgerald in just a moment. OTB Sports Radio is on all day, every day on the OTB Sports app. At 1 o'clock is Michael Owen's Life After Football. Mount Rushmore. At 3 o'clock is Galway. The Competitive Obsession is our retro panel from 4. And Dennis Ogie Moran, a rare interview with Ogie from 6, and then obviously the show will be live tonight from 7 with Joe and the rest as well. Up next, we're talking hurling with Davy Fitzgerald.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
So the glass is half full with Munster so far.
It always is for me. Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
We want better performances, we want more attack. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing to be shouting out, but it made me really proud to be a Munster man.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
Radio and audio in Ireland has never been more powerful, more effective, or had more opportunity for growth. And now Radio Centre Ireland is here, we're looking to accelerate. To do that, we're looking for a CEO with a focus on increasing advertising investment and championing radio's unique advantages that make it so effective, flexible, and impactful. We need a candidate with the experience, credibility, and vision to lead, drive, influence, shape, and grow this industry. Someone who will be our voice, representing and promoting radio to commercial partners and agencies alike as a medium that delivers return on investment. If that's you, We want to hear from you, and we know we will, because radio works. Apply now. Visit radiocenterireland.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
It's 8:58. You're welcome back to OTB AM. Gillette have partnered with Movember to encourage men to talk men's health and to support men as they shave down and embrace a mo. Movember is the leading men's charity, changing the face of men's health on a global scale, focusing on mental health and suicide prevention, prostate cancer and testicular cancer. Gillette, proud sponsors of Movember. Gentlemen, it's your moment. Did you get it? Moment. To kick us into Movember, Tommy has been out for a shave down with All-Ireland final opponents Matty Ruane and Colm McShane. Have a look.
So, like, see from you from being midfielder, like, would you be, what would your target, like, just as a midfielder, would you be just going out, like, in terms of, would you set yourself targets in terms of what you'd be looking to score, or would you just play off the cuff, whatever comes your way? Or, you know, as like an inside forward, you might say, right, like, you might set yourself targets of what you want to score or whatever. Like, is it different from midfielder? Because I know whenever I was out the field, it was kind of just about hard work, and if a score came, maybe it's different for you. What?
Yeah, like, it depends on your role in the team. Like, obviously, as a midfielder, you want to be able to do it all. Like, you want to be winning your kickouts, you want to be scoring, you want to be getting your turnovers, you want to be getting your defensive. You do set targets in all those areas, and 9 times out of 10, you're not going to hit them all. Like, I know it's a fairly obvious one for you, is just scoring, like, but for me, it's like, I always try and set targets in all those areas, and a lot of the time, the way the game pans out, like some games you might get 4 or 5 shots, 6 shots. It's just the way the rub of the green on the day, or other days it might be really poor weather, you know, really heavy day, and you mightn't be able to just make that, you know, long burst and run through the middle or whatever, or there might be a packed defence, whatever. So you just have to adjust and think, you know, how can I best influence the team on any given day? But yeah, you definitely do set out targets. I do personally anyway. But no more, like, what do you do yourself?
It's not even, it's kind of like, as in, like, sometimes what I've brought into my game recently is like an assist as well as a big part, you know, and maybe that's for midfielder if you set up or whatever. But even, like, say if I make a run the corner and, you know, I'm not involved, but the ball's in the back of the net over the wire, then you're thinking, right, that's my score. Like, I played a big part in that role, because I think it's, again, it was Stephen O'Neill that sort of said that to me. He was kind of like, you know, you don't, like, whenever you look back in video work and stuff, that run makes that score, and, you know, it's not just me, it could be someone else in there making a run, and if they don't make that run, that score doesn't happen. So he's like, your mindset needs to change there, and that was definitely beneficial. So hey, listen, you go out, like, it's probably different this year coming back from injury and stuff. You're coming on as a sub and you're just trying to come on, make an impact, and, you know, help the team in any way possible. But definitely over the years, you're just as an inside forward, and we're setting targets, trying to hit them, and then do his best to the team. So.
And, like, I know we were chatting just a couple of minutes ago, you were kind of saying, like, you'd nearly treat your shot as like a golf shot nearly. You know, you'd even slow down your backswing, like the way you drop the ball. Like, would you look at it that way, or would you?
I definitely, because I was saying, I go back to the club now, and sometimes see some of the players, like, you know, like, it's not that you just see that sort of, like, boys could maybe develop their kick a lot better, and it's just small wee tweaks, because you're right, like, sometimes it's just like golf, when you try and smash the ball, 9 times out of 10 it doesn't come off. So, like, in Gaelic, whenever you just get down, and it doesn't matter even for a free kick, if you nail the technique, you know, then it doesn't matter if you're 10 yards out, 30, 40 yards out. Like, if you nail the technique, it's just that same rhythm every time, and, you know, it's a good place to be. But again, I won the Ireland final over hockey. Like, I was disappointed with that one, to be honest. But again, whenever I look back at that, it's interesting, because my technique wasn't right. I didn't nail my technique, and I think that's the reason why it didn't get the score. But I just always aim for high standards and going from there.
Yeah, always interesting to when those Toronto lads are talking, there's a lot going on, and you can hear that from Colm McShane and Matty Ruane. That's all part of Movember. We'll get more into that over the coming days and weeks. Now, I want to tell you about this, because to celebrate the sponsorship of Ireland's fittest family and to reward local communities across Ireland, Londis has launched a competition for lucky school or club to win a coach training session with hurling legend and show coach Davy Fitzgerald. Londis will sponsor the hit TV show for a 3rd year in a row, which returns to our screens on Sunday the 31st of October for a 9th season. That's this Halloween, and I'm delighted to say Davy Fitzgerald is with us this morning. Davy, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, all good. Yeah.
So 9 years of Ireland's fittest family. That's some ride.
Yeah, like I can remember when we were going to we were talking to the production company at the start, and they said if we got 1 or 2 years, we'd be doing well. But you know what? It's gone from strength to strength, and it's great.
Where did the idea come from?
Came over a cup of coffee one morning, myself and a friend of mine, James Sexton. We got talking about a thing called Superstars before. I can remember all the GAA legends were in it there years and years ago, and we started developing an idea around family, like wouldn't it be great if you could do something with your family? And it all started from there, a meeting there, and then we got RT in Dublin, and then we got into a production company, and off it went.
And there's been various talks around the past about it maybe being internationalised. Is that still on the cards, do you think?
Yeah, it's hit a few different countries. I think it's hit probably 6 or 7 or 8 countries at this stage. So it has. So it's been great. The fact that we have an Irish product that has been used in different countries has been great, you know. We haven't got into the UK or America yet, but we're still trying.
Is Davy Fitz, the Irish fittest family coach, a more scary prospect than Davy Fitz, the intercounty hurling sideline manager?
No, I think it's pretty similar.
Right.
What you'll probably always see is that 2 or 3 minutes of the lad roaring and shouting, and probably even in fittest family there's 12 or 13 hours in a day, you know. So as you well know, in the media you're going to use the best shots you can or use the best sound bites you can. So that's what's going to be used. But at times that has to be done. Other times it's just talk and try and chat stuff out and get the best of your family you possibly can.
Has this made you a better manager, your involvement with this?
It's made me think about things a small bit different, all right. Although I think as time goes on, you always adapt and you always change anyhow. Like the way probably I managed in 2008, 9 and 10, it changed a bit to 13, 14, 15, and it's changed again in the last year or two. Like I think you're always trying to learn and develop different ways, and definitely my coaching style would have, and my management style would have changed a lot over the last number of years.
How?
I would think the way now I've probably figured out you have to get the best, you have to make sure you get the best out of the person, figure out the person. Like before, maybe I would have concentrated on the whole, train them a certain way, working them a certain way. Now it's to understand the person and to try and see their strengths and weaknesses and try and work on them.
So it's a more individualised approach as opposed to just saying, I'm going to make sure that this group feels the same way, it goes through the same suffering and pain or whatever, or they all have the same tactical awareness. Now it's like, okay, you're going to have a particular function for me in a much larger whole.
Like everybody is different and how to take on information. You've got to understand that. Then every player has to be different, has to have different weaknesses and maybe how to play or how to do stuff. Like someone might be unbelievable speed, might need a bit of stuff on their technical hurling, might be weak on one facet, so that got to understand it. Another guy might be just bad at taking on information, can't see what we're talking about. How do we get him to understand? You just have a lot of different stuff to figure out to put the jigsaw together.
That's obviously time consuming as a manager, particularly in a scenario where your contact hours with the players is actually quite limited.
Yeah, it is. Well, it is limited. It's limited to when you see them at training. Like with Wexford, for example, I'd be there at 5 o'clock. We might train at 7, and I wouldn't leave for an hour afterwards. You could be talking to different people, or on the way down the car, you could be ringing 2 or 3 of them just to chat and get over stuff. So it's a lot longer day than you would think, you know. And I suppose it's the same in Fittest Family. You're trying to understand the 4 people on the show and get the best out of them. It's the same thing.
When you're having those conversations on the way home with a player, 2 or 3 players you mentioned there, what are you talking about? Is there a general theme that tends to pop up?
No, it just depends what I spot or what I see. Like it as I've mentioned, it could be anything. It could be a simple chat, like maybe I'm getting 1 or 2 signals that they're not in great form or stuff like that, you know, and just having a chat, or maybe to something I see in their game and I want to talk to them about it. There's various different things, you know. And sometimes I've often just rang a lad on the way home and have a chat with him, you know, for no particular reason.
How do you look back on your time at Wexford now? What's the bit that keeps you awake at night sometimes, or what's the bit that makes you think, balls, if just we'd done that, things would have been different?
Oh, Jesus. I could go into so many things where I'd look back, guys, and I'd say, if I only did that different, you know, like that isn't just a once-off thing, you know. That has happened a few times, you know.
At Wexford in particular?
No, guys, I'd say with any team, it's happened at different times. Like, I can remember Wexford this year against Clare. Like, I don't know if you remember, the day was extremely hot, very hot. And I cut the warm-up by about 10 or 11 minutes. And if you look at our performance in the first 10 or 15 minutes, we struggled to get our breath. Like, you could see we weren't at the pitch of the game. And, like, I thought I was doing the right thing, just cutting the warm-up down because it was too hot. But I didn't get to find that out afterwards, that maybe I should have broke our wind a bit more so that they would have been able to go, you know. But there's been different. I'm sure every manager is the same, that they'll come across things that they say, I wish I did that, or I changed that, you know.
And is the tip game in the All-Ireland semi-final, is that something then that still kind of is one of those sliding door moments for your relationship and that Wexford team's future?
I was very proud of them that day. The only thing I had changed different that day, so when I got a chance, like, if you look at it, when the man got sent off for tip, we had 7 defenders at the back and we had 5 on 6 up front, right? So what we did was, I said, I'll push one of the extra guys up on their spare man, which kind of made sense, right? But all I did was, like, put 6 and 6 back there. What I probably would have done if I got a second chance was put that extra man to midfield and made Tipperary bring out a man, you know? So it would have been 5 and 5 back there. But it's easy in hindsight, like where we got to win Leinster that year, Wexford, coming from where we come from, was incredible. So I was happy. Had we an opportunity, we had an opportunity. But it's easy to look back and say that if we went sharper with the puckouts, which we tried to do, maybe the lads just needed to show a bit more. They didn't show. Like, you can look at various things in any match you do. Like, I picked the Leinster semi-final this year against Kilkenny. Like, we were right there, just needed a break and didn't get one.
How great was the temptation to go on again next year with Wexford?
Oh man, Jesus, it was very hard to leave Wexford. Very hard. You know, there's very few managers' jobs you'd get, I'd say, to be where you probably get on so well with the players, but you have a great relationship with the fan base as well. Like, it doesn't happen that much in GAA where you have that after 4 or 5 years. That's being honest with you. It was, but lads, there's only so much you can keep doing, and I've always said there's been 1 or 2 things in my private life that I have to take probably a look into a bit more and things like that. So, you know, the decision was made and that's the way it was. But I'll never regret my time there, ever.
You were obviously publicly at this stage very close to getting the Galway job. What was the attraction of that job?
Yeah, as I said before, we had a chat, and naturally, I think they've unbelievable players. They just haven't been at the pitch of it for the last 2 or 3 years. But I still think they've unbelievable players and they've a lot of talent coming around. So, like, naturally, why wouldn't you have a chat?
So it's not that you're done with inter-county management. It's the travel to Wexford seems to have been part of the issue there, whereas actually travel to Galway is a bit easier for a Clare man.
Well, it would have been a small bit easier. We had the chat and that, yeah. But you know what? What's meant for you is meant for you, and I'm actually happy enough. Now I have that breather, and I you know, and it's just said to me, I'm going to actually just make sure now I'm going to take that time. I don't see myself doing very much next year on the GAA front, so I'm just going to take that bit of time.
This will be your first break in a long time.
I was going over to the night, lads. Would you believe I came on the county senior hurling panel in 1989? I think it was October, November 89. And I'd say I've nearly been involved in county every single year up to probably 2022 will probably be my first year where I won't be involved in inter-county action at somewhere or another.
because I was having a similar enough chat with Kieran McGeeney during the summer, and he would have come on stream at intercounty level around the same time as you, and has been involved with intercounty ever since. What is it about yourself and people like Kieran McGeeney that keeps driving you and keeps you going without that break? Because I presume everybody else kind of needs to step away at some point sooner than you guys have done.
You know what, guys? I think back on it, and when I was a young fella, maybe 6, 7 or 8, and the way I felt about watching my club, Six Mile Bridge, about watching Clare playing and going to all the games, and I so wanted to be part of it. That bug has never left me. It meant so much to me back when I was so young. Like, I really, really wanted to be part of it. And when I got in there, then, Jesus, I just absolutely loved it. And I've been there since, you know, and I've been a very lucky boy to have played with some great players and managed some great players, and it's been a hell of a spin, I can tell you. And I like, it's just that probably that love of what I actually do, and from a very young age I had that. Is
a little part of you a little bit scared about what's not scared, but concerned about what's coming next when that is no longer part of your life, when you're not talking to young lads about whatever's going on in their lives, when you're not talking to coaches specifically about what the game plan is for the opposition, when you're not obsessively watching the video of what's coming next?
Yeah, you know what, that has entered my head well before this year. And to be honest with you, like, I'm a person that needs to be kept on the go the whole time. So I've half prepared a few different bits and pieces in my life outside the GAA that'll keep me busy. I knew this moment would come at some stage, and we'll see how I'll adapt it. Like, it's something that, yeah, it's going to be different, and I'm going to have, there's new challenges and new things that I'm going to do that I'm looking forward to. I'm a bit nervous about how much I'll miss the GAA. I'll be able to tell you that in a few months, guys. I'm only out of it. Like, I'm out with my club there about a week ago, so this is the first week off. Normally I'd be straight back into intercounty, just going mad, looking at stuff straight away. But we'll see how the next few months, I should be able to answer that question a bit better for you.
I suppose it can go a million different ways. There's a load of different range of outcomes possible here, but it could be that you actually really enjoy this life outside with the decompression, civilian life as we refer to it, or it could be that you feel that you really need to get back into intercounty management. So this isn't an end for you, definitely.
Lads, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, I try and embrace every day the best I can. Am I a perfect person? I'm not. I make mistakes like everybody else, but I'm going to enjoy today as much as possible. I'm going to take on whatever comes my way. Can I tell you I'll be back in the GAA world? Like, I'd be very surprised if I wasn't helping in somewhere or another, or doing something if I wasn't doing that. But there is other things as well that I know that I'm going to try and do and see how I get on. So I don't know. It is maybe a small bit scary, but we'll see what's out there and what the story is. But you're right. As regards, you know what, just it'd be great just to be walking down the street or whatever and have no pressures of, well, is it pressure? That's the question. I don't think so, but have no responsibility of doing a county team or playing, you know.
Because I guess the way the GAA has gone over the last little while, there are so many other ways to get that drug other than being an intercounty manager, which is unbelievably time consuming. I'm sure maybe other gigs have maybe entered your mind prospectively when you think about the near future.
Yeah, there is other things that have crossed my mind that I'm looking at, and I've talked to different people. There is other business interests I'm looking at. Like, I have a few things that I need to pay more attention to, so I have to take care of them. And there's one or two things in my private life that I'm really excited about going happening fairly soon.
And when the text comes from off the ball to do a bit of punditry next year, is it a yes or a no?
Never say never, guys. You know, like, you know what I love? Like, I like the amount of games I've gone to in Cusick Park, and I sit down behind the goals. Now, I absolutely got nailed for doing an umpire there recently. They were giving out to me for doing umpire, right? And the funny thing was, my best mate was reffing a game, and I got to the umpire, and I said, yeah, I'd love to. I've often helped out, and they were saying, he shouldn't be doing umpire. He's going there to spot what they're doing. And it's funny, if I wasn't doing umpire, I'd be sitting 10 yards behind the goals because I have a lovely spot in Ennis where I go and watch the games, and I'd be in the exact same position. And I enjoy that. I love going to watch the games and just seeing what's happening or what's new, or can I see any bit of tactical stuff that anyone is doing. I love that. So you never know, guys. You never know what we could end up doing.
We've got a brilliant football pod with Paddy Andrews talking about what life was like inside the Dublin setup alongside Andy Moran every week. And Paddy talks about when you're in the bubble, you'll do absolutely anything. That there's a madness, and he kind of describes it really well. And I'm butchering it a little bit, but essentially that when you are in the midst of trying to win All Irelands, they would have said that Mayo were coming there to steal their All Ireland and take their medals away from them, and they would do whatever it took to be successful. And it definitely seems like that's part of every inter-county setup at the elite level, is that there's a little bit of hatred for your opponents, there's like a self-regard, and absolutely everything is secondary. But when you step out of it, he said when he stepped out of it, it kind of all fell away, and it was like, oh geez, Andy Moore is actually quite a nice fella, and here I have been fostering this hate the whole time. Now that you're stepping away, are you decompressing from a bit of the madness that kind of followed in the various jobs that you've had, and particularly in your own county as well?
You know, you've hit the nail on the head there, like, and what he said to you is the exact truth. When you are in that environment, you have to have that bit of killer in you, you have to have that bit of hate. But, like, I actually would be a lot better the last few years as regards when it's over for me. Like 9/10 of the time, I wouldn't carry grudges. Now, the only thing is, when you're in that spotlight, there might be other people that mightn't be able to let go of grudges. That's the only other thing. I can't do anything about that. But in general, I'd like to think like I enjoy going playing the cards of a Monday night or a Thursday night with my friends. I enjoy going playing the games of golf and just being out there and forgetting about the GAA at different times. You know, it's so different when you're in it and you're really invested in it and you're training and you're thinking about it. Yeah, that killer instinct, whatever you got to do, you got to do. And then when you can let yourself go and forget about it, it's completely the opposite. And you know what? I wouldn't say, I'd say, like, if I could not harbour grudges, I'd try it. But there is, I suppose, people out there who won't let that happen. They'll try and keep you in that set, no matter what the story is. They might have a go at you, and it's just very hard to get out of it.
Do you think you'll find peace in Clare with everything that's happened over the last couple of years?
I just think there's a very small bunch in Clare that have an issue. Like, if you look at it, when we came back in 2011, we were pretty successful for them few years. It had been 20 years before Clare had won much, and I think we won 2 promotions, 2 Munster Leagues, National League and All Ireland. I don't think that was too bad, guys, you know. So maybe there's a word you can find out there to figure out why people would be tick or would be cross, you know. I have one in my head, but I'll keep it to myself. There's a lot of people in Clare that are really good. Really good. They're not buying into the rubbish that's on the internet or the lies. They don't buy into it, and they're the people I'm interested in talking about. We can't do anything about anyone else, guys. Just that's the way it is.
I guess it doesn't sound like there's a piece there that whatever is the issue will always be an issue.
When a certain few people get stuff into their heads and they won't let go, like, I can't do anything about that. Would I prefer it wasn't there? Yeah. I'm very proud of my time as a player and as a manager. I'm very proud of our family's involvement over the last number of years in Clare. I think it's been pretty fruitful, and you know, I look back at that with a sense of pride. But the amount of people I meet in Clare who just say to me, very small minority, Davy, just forget about it. And I'd meet a lot of people that would say that to me.
So they're the people you're going to spend your time with, I suppose.
You know what? I'm happy to talk to anyone, guys. You know, if someone wants to chat and they're nice, why not have the chat? It won't hurt, you know.
It's not a sadness in your life then that's the situation has developed the way it has, is it?
Yeah, like when it's your, like, I've just explained to you, like, why should that be there? Can you explain to me? Like, I don't think I did any wrong when I was there. Only bring a bit of success. So I don't understand it. But what can I do? I can't dwell on it either. Like, I'll be honest with you, I read very little. My friends might say to me, "Did you see this on the internet or that?" And I said, "No." "Did you hear your man off the ball saying X, Y, and Z?" And I said, "No, don't want to hear it." I try and ignore it as much as I possibly can.
Does part of you dream of winning an All-Ireland with Clare again?
She's one you love. Like I'm a Clare man. I love my county, and as I told you, like the vast majority of Clare people are unreal. So they are. We have a few people that have ideas, like they used to give out to us about the way we play, about playing sharp ball and X, Y, and Z. Now most of the teams are playing a lot of sharp ball, including Clare, and Clare are very effective when they do play it. And it's funny, we were trying to say that 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. So it is. I told you as a young fella, I dreamed about playing for my club, 6 Mile Bridge, and playing for Clare. And, I still have that little bit inside of me, no matter what the story is. I'm a Clare man, and I love them. And listen, I'm sure I'll be doing stuff with my club, and I'm sure you never know down the line what might happen. I don't know, but can't take away what has been done, and I'm very proud.
One last thing. The challenge that Limerick have at the moment is the quality of hurler they have on top of the physicality they have. It's a new package even from the great Kilkenny team. Can that be stopped, or do they just need to blow themselves out? Like, can somebody come along and beat that now when they're at their peak, or do we just have to wait for them to win another couple of All-Irelands and get a bit bored of it?
Well, you look at when you talk about Kilkenny, right? Remember, we were talking there at one patch. How is this ever going to end? Is Kilkenny are going to dominate for so long, and X, Y, and Z, and their team was incredible. And they were. I think every team's cycle will come to an end. I believe that. Limerick are in the middle of theirs at the moment, and I have to say they're phenomenal. And their game plan, the way they've worked it, but someone will come up with something that'll change things around, like how Kilkenny played was a certain way and it was good, and then we changed. A few different teams had to change things a small bit, and it'll be the same. Limerick are exceptional at what they do, and someone will probably come up with something to go against that over the next few years, but you have to admire them, guys. They're absolutely phenomenal. The way, and I have to say, even the way they conduct themselves, I love it, is good. Because that says a lot for a team off the field, the way you are as well. And they are killers when they're on the field, trust me.
Well, Davy, we wish you the very best with your retirement, if that's the right term for it for now, however long it may last, and continue success in the TV show.
We'll say the break anyhow for the moment.
Fair enough, that's more accurate. Yeah.
We'll see what the story is.
Good stuff, Davy. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Take care of yourselves, all right?
It's Davy Fitzgerald there talking to us as Londis are celebrating their sponsorship of Fittest Family, looking to reward local communities across Ireland, and a competition to win a coach training session with Davy Fitz. Check out londis.ie for more details on that. Okay, so on YouTube, Pat Butler says, thanks for everything you did for Wexford, Davy. Best of luck for the future. And there you go. That is that. It's 9:27 this morning. I think he'll be back.
Oh, without question. That's definitely a sort of, we're going to take this winter off and go again, it seems. And he's wondering, what is he, 1 week into retirement technically, if 6 Mile Bridge are done. So maybe it'll be 2 weeks before the itch comes back again. It sounds like it's one hell of a stint of not taking a break from intercounty at all.
Andy Minton was on last night talking about Solskjaer's future as Manchester United manager. Here he is talking about Ferguson's influence in the background. Have a look.
Ferguson was always scheduled to be at Carrington. He would have been there if United would have beaten Liverpool 15-0.
Right, okay.
He's got a voice which is worth listening to. And I think when you've got people like him, Ole Gunnar trusts him and would speak to him on a fairly regular basis, sometimes sees him in person. If I was a manager, I'd do exactly the same thing. This image of him calling the shots behind the scenes, that's not my understanding of things. When Ferguson left, he made a point of saying, you won't see me for a while. And he walked away. and he didn't want a repeat situation of when Sir Matt Busby left Manchester United and kept an office at the club, and you had senior players going into that office and playing golf with him. Now, over the years, some senior players have gone to Sir Alex Ferguson's house. I spoke to one of them, Patrice Evra. I've been working on his autobiography, and there's a story in that where he himself went to Sir Alex Ferguson's house. But Ferguson is someone whose view is respected, but I certainly don't get the impression that he's calling the shots behind the scenes. As you quite rightly said, ultimately it's Joel Glazer who will make the decision, and he would get information from the people whose opinions he trusts. Doesn't take in a genius to work out things are not well at Old Trafford, but my understanding is that this week Ole Gunnar's taking his team as normal and preparing for the game at Tottenham at the weekend.
Yeah, so that's the very latest there from Andy Mitten speaking on the football show last night. You can get that in our football podcast feed. Search OTB Football. The best place to get all our podcasts is on the OTB Sports app. That's where you can also listen to OTB AM live every morning as a radio show. For all our podcasts, just click on the podcast tab and you just head to radio for our 24/7 live audio feed. Download the OTB Sports app now for free in your app store. I want to tell you about this as well. If you're a Liverpool fan in particular, you won't want to miss our latest Cadbury FC Roadshow. We're going behind the scenes at Anfield with legendary striker Robbie Fowler. We'll be joined by Liverpool captain and Ireland international Niamh Fahey and former Liverpool midfielder and physio Richie Partridge, who is with Qatar at the moment. It's all thanks to Cadbury FC and their club partnerships, granting you behind the scenes access at the Premier League's biggest clubs. Coming soon to OTB Sports social channels. A reminder that OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're going to hear from Galway Hurling Committee Chairperson Paul Bellew, who joins us on the show tomorrow to chat about their appointment of Henry Shefflin. And we're bringing you the new Netflix film Colin in Black and White. That's about Colin Kaepernick and much more as well. Right now, here's more on the future of Gaelic football. Colm Keys of the Irish Indo and Longford's Mickey Quinn on whether or not change is actually on the horizon.
You're welcome back. We're talking GAA Congress. Debated Plan B for an hour and 15 minutes. In the end, Plan B did win a majority, 50.6% of the votes at Congress, 85 votes to 83. So not insignificant by any means in terms of support, but still well shy of the required 60% to pass the motion. To discuss, we're joined by Colm Keys of the Irish Independent and Mickey Quinn, who is a Longford footballer as well. Gents, thanks very much for giving us your time. Colm, your sense of the hour and 15 minutes of debate and how special Congress went on the whole?
I thought there was 22 speakers, Joe, and I just felt marginally from listening to the debate that those in opposition to Proposal B were slightly more passionate than those for it. If you look at the breakdown of the counties that spoke, 8 from Ulster spoke against, and the one county that supported it in Ulster Down stayed silent. If you move to Leinster, taking out John Horn, who proposed it, only Michael Duggan, the Offaly chair, spoke. So that's 1 from 12 counties. Dublin, largest county and the standard bearers in football for the last decade, remained silent. And there's no confirmation as to what way they voted or what way they were thinking. So if you consider, and I would have thought a lot of Leinster counties have most to gain from this. I would have felt that Leinster counties, and to a degree Munster counties obviously too, would have most to gain. And yet the only delegate that spoke was Offaly's Michael Duggan. That those two things surprised me. But I felt the passion for retaining an Ulster Championship came across very, very strongly by those delegates from Ulster who spoke. And obviously, you'd have to credit the contributions of some of those who did speak in favour too. The Sligo chairman, Sean Carroll, Declan Bowen from Leitrim, Kevin O'Donoghue from Cork, as well as Sean Kelly. They spoke well, but passionate, I have to say, to me, being there, it struck me that those who spoke for were that bit more fervent to keep it in place, notwithstanding that the merits of the argument I felt were probably better towards Proposal B, but those that wanted to keep it sounded really strong to me on it. And I have to say, I came away thinking that if this is to pass, if this is to get to 60% and over, it will take a lot of shifting. There's a lot of shifting in that 10%, but I think it starts with those counties, and obviously they haven't made it known, but those counties that might be on the margin. I think on balance Kerry probably voted against it if you're to judge by the chair down there, Tim Murphy's comments at Congress. But you'd have to go to Kerry. Whoever's picking up the baton now must go to those counties that are somewhere in between and say, well, what tweaks do you have in mind? What gets this over the line?
Yeah.
And that's really where I think it has to start. You got to go to those counties. You can be quite sure that if you want proposal B, or even a variation of it, none of those Ulster counties that oppose it are really going to support it, unless the Ulster Championship or the provincial championships are going to be the basis. So to get to 60%, you must go to those counties that are in the middle. And look, I'm not sure who exactly. There's certainly a lot of speculation that Dublin didn't vote for this, despite the fact that John Costello, I can't say, they haven't confirmed it, but there was a suspicion around Congress that they didn't. And John Costello was part of the task force. You got to go to them if indeed that they didn't, they opposed it, Kerry and others like that, and say, well, what do you think this needs to get it over the line?
Yeah. So Colm, to expand on that for a second then, so all the Ulster counties bar down said no thanks, and we can understand why. They quite like their provincial championship and it's working okay. All the provincial council said no way, which is understandable, if not entirely admirable, but it's understandable because they would effectively be handing over their power. And then the Division 1 teams, it emerges, if we take it that maybe Dublin certainly didn't say anything, and there's a suspicion they may have voted against this. The Division 1 teams did not like this, and I guess James Horan talked about this in the build-up to Special Congress, where he was saying, well, look, we're not so sure about us toiling away in the Division 1 qualification stage, and, you know, if we were to finish outside the qualification spots, that's our All-Ireland series done, and yet there's a team from Division 4 getting through. We're not so sure about the fairness of that. That sentiment, we can assume, is there because Mayo against it, Galway against it, Kerry had a free vote, but we're sensing a no. We're sensing a no from Dublin, obviously a no from Tyrone, so that's all four of the semi-finalists. So this Division 1 hesitation or sense of, well, hang on, this is unfair, allied to Ulster saying no, that sounds like, and I know there is no like overarching reason for any of this, but it sounds like Division 1 hesitation allied to Ulster went a long way towards knocking this vote.
Yeah, I would say they're the two aspects of it. Obviously, there are other aspects. I did hear that Dublin may have had a scheduling issue, that the games were coming thick and fast between a Leinster final and then straight into a league. But again, Joe, I don't know, because Dublin obviously have kept their cards close to their chest on this. So we actually don't know. But again, speculation. But I would think that those counties, to see what is it that held up their vote most and what issues could be addressed. I would suspect that Ulster's red line is meaningful provincial championships to provide some gateway, and that's not going to change. I think there's a bit of a rock and a hard place here in between, and that to get those votes, it is going to have to be a little bit different. But if it's only a matter of tweaking, let's say to pivot into a 1A and 1B where the top four teams go through, well, that takes away the issue over the sixth team, which was an issue for all the Division 1 teams, obviously, as they are at the present moment.
Yeah.
But if you go 1A, that's putting the top 16 into two groups, 4 Division 1 as they currently are, 4 Division 2. That takes that away. And then no team that finishes 5th or 6th can blame the system, because they've had an equal opportunity here. Yeah. And you replicate that with 2A and 2B as well. And that's what worked until 2007. And I would have felt at the time it was a very good competition. It helped to, keep the standards pretty close together. After a while, if you're playing the top teams, if you're a Division 2 team and you're playing 3 or 4 Division 1 teams on a consistent basis, you're going to improve over a period of time. That's where I think this should be going to.
Mickey Quinn is a 31-year-old Longford footballer, prime of your career. Mickey, what was your reaction on Saturday when the news came through?
Probably wasn't surprised that it didn't get over the line, but it was disappointing. But it's something that probably came from it, from listening to all the different speakers on both sides, that you know, that there is an appetite there for change, and that it seems to have an awful lot more momentum now than it had in the past. You know, like the Super 8s came in, and you know, go back to 2018, when that fixtures task force was put together. You know, 3 years down the line, the worry was that, you know, this didn't get through a Congress, and it's going to be another 3, maybe 4 years before you get back to that stage again. And that was the initial reaction. But from hearing Liam McCarthy's comments afterwards, it was positive that, you know, that it's back on the table in February, hopefully, and it's important that things are moved quickly, that it's not reinventing the wheel now at this stage. For the last number of years, there's been an awful lot of good work put into these committees by good people, and it might take small little tweaks or changes here, but it's not starting from scratch again. So a lot of the work has been done and hard graft has been done there by those people. Hopefully that it can come to fruition sooner rather than later.
And say it doesn't for a second, because I'm going to chat about that with Colm in a moment. Like Michael Dugan, for instance, just to counter your optimism, he said that a lot of people spoke against this because there hasn't been enough debate. Well, there's been a lot of debate. It's been going on for 2 years, so I don't take that on board. People are protecting their own interests. And Podge Collins, for instance, said, what's worrying me is that this fixtures task force has been put in place by the GAA. They spent 2 years looking at this. And we saw at the weekend the levels of support there were for the 2 best proposals that they could come up with. I'm not optimistic for change, and I'm not too optimistic about what's coming down the line. I won't be holding my breath. So I take your optimism. There's a lot of GAA people who think that when everybody's saying, oh, we need change, that there's, there's a disingenuous tint to that actually, while they say and they agree we need change, but actually they've no intention of voting for change, and they're never going to have to reveal what way they voted, such as the way the Congress works. So if it stays as it is, Mickey, where does that leave you as a Longford footballer?
Yeah, probably for me, you try and take it from your own point of view, a personal side of things, and for yourself, and then probably for maybe the whole of Longford, the football team, and then probably by being involved in the GPA, you're looking at it as a whole across the board. But for me personally, something like that, you're kind of thinking, right, if it came in, I'm kind of thinking to myself there, we have a chance for possibly 2, 3 titles there that might be a bit more achievable than what it is in the current system. And that as a result of that change, that I'd be willing to, I hope to hang on and give it a crack for 2-3 years. Whereas if you go back to the old system now again, it's going to be very hard to motivate, probably myself, but motivate others, other players in other counties and our own to offer that commitment and give up their times. Like, I think something that COVID has taught us is that there's more to life than football, and there's almost a balance between the amount of time that players give up and what they're getting out of it. And for me personally, I've got lots of football, and I know lots of people that wouldn't feel the same way. But I think that's something that, because of the structure at the moment, I think not just your over 30s, your mid 20s, your guys that have played in under 20 for their county team, that they're going to reconsider things going forward. And if that carrot of winning something and a different structure isn't there, it's going to be a lot less appealing.
Okay, so in effect, you're saying this shortens my career. I might hang around for a year, 18 months, as things stand, if that's how they stay. If the change was to come in and more games than the summer, well, I'll play on as long as I can play on and the body allows. So that could be a difference of 3, 4, 5 years potentially. I think so. And I don't think, kind of when I say that, I try and think that, is that just me, or is that going to be a case for other players? And I'd imagine players in similar positions will be thinking similarly. So, yeah. Because you won Division 4, Longford won Division 4 in 2011 and Division 3 in 2012. You imagine if they were in the Plan B summer, height of summer, all these matches, crowds coming, a sense of momentum, and then you get your big day out against one of the big boys and you give it a lash. And the thing is, unlike, say, in the current format where a Division 4 side might be out of form and be thrown against Dublin and it's an annihilation, at least you'd go in with a sense of confidence and momentum and be able maybe to cause a bit of an upset, and you would have deserved your chance against the big boys. But like those summers, those Division 4 and Division 3 wins would be amazing summers in Longford, and you'd have great games and then get your shot. Whereas, I don't know, I mean, what's there to look forward to realistically next summer?
Yeah, like probably for us, and it's probably something that kind of crept by, and with COVID, like one in a Byrne Cup has, you know, it's only my second trophy ever winning wearing a Longford jersey, and albeit other counties mightn't be fully using it as a pre-season competition, but for us it was an opportunity, that it was a cup that we could win, and we went for it. And you know, that's something that the idea in that, as you said, in the middle of summer rather than on a wet pitch in middle of February, that you have the chance there to have your own supporters and create a buzz around the county, because I don't think GAA is where it used to be in rural counties, and that on the club scene definitely, but from an inter-county scene, it kind of it drifts to the background very quickly, because you know it comes and goes by very quickly. You're National League, and then you're into maybe 2 championship games. The most championship games I played in 1 year was in 2012, where we had a draw in Leinster against Wexford, played them again, and then a run in the qualifiers too. So those 5 games, and you almost felt like it was twice as long the season getting those 5 games in comparison to maybe 2 or 3. And I think over 10 years I've played 31 championship games, so you're just averaging 3 championship games a year. And I think that's what halters progression and development in the likes of Longford and other counties, that your season is cut short very quickly, and you know, the hope by a different structure to try and progress and have continuous progression and improvement from year to year. I think that's where probably people get caught up in looking at a structure or a system like this in 1 year cycles. You kind of need to think maybe 3, 4, 5 year cycles, where you might end up in 2 years or 3 years in a system like this, and does it allow for progression or regression?
So, Colm, Larry McCarthy said, well, we're very keen come February at Congress to have another motion on the table, a motion with some tweaks. It's worth stating that at Congress there'll be over 300 delegates, as opposed to, I think it's the 180 or so at Special Congress. So that's there's more people to convince and more people with problems, I'm sure, with whatever tweaks are made. And I suppose that gets to the nub of the worry here that somebody like Mickey and lots of players around the country would have when delegates come out and say, we're agreed, change has to happen. The cynic in you would think, well, when we go away and we tweak Plan B and we make some tweaks, there'll be more problems, or other people will come up with new problems, and really this thing is just not going to happen. I don't know how hopeful you would be of something happening in February.
No, I don't think I would be hopeful for something happening in February, because February's not far away to start with. I think it'll probably take the next Central Council meeting to approve a new committee, and I think the committee lead on that will have to be very, very strong to be able to pull all the strands together on this. If you're using the template of Proposal B and you are making a few tweaks and you think the consensus around those counties who may not have voted for it, if you think the consensus there is, that'll work, then February is a realistic target. Larry McCarthy, I thought Tom Parsons was GPA chief executive, was more optimistic about February than perhaps Larry McCarthy was. There wouldn't be anything to stop another special Congress this time next year, but it would be quite a body of work to just pull it together and have it ready, say, for the end of January, because this needs to be obviously debated again and teased out. And if some delegates in the room are saying, well, it was all too quick after 2.5 years, because if you remember the task force came together in June 2019, you know, if it's been there for 2.5 years and it's been discussed and debated and everything else, and still I didn't feel there was fully a grasp of of all the detail in it. When you still have some delegates reckoning that those league championship games aren't actually championship games. Well, of course they are. That's the championship. That's the lead into the championship. And there was a lot of that these are only league games and nobody will get to play, and not only a few teams will get to play a knockout championship. But that is the way in Champions League and World Cup and other sports as well. And maybe it's, maybe there's a unique element to the GAA that a lot of delegates will want to keep. But I wouldn't be hugely optimistic that this will be resolved by February. And even the short term, I think, given that it's almost a 50-50 split, and you're thinking there's still a block there, there's still a strong block there that will protect the provinces in that while, and Brian McAvoy, the Ulster Secretary, obviously said that the provincial championships must maintain a link. That's what I took from it. To get any proposal over the line, it will need that link. I'm not sure what that is, whether the provincial champions, whether there's a mixture between league and provincial champions will get a place in the All-Ireland playoffs. That could be something, but it would need to be very creative and obviously fair and balanced. And to tick all the boxes is just not going to be easy here. Once the fundamental principle of the provincial championships remaining as the centrepiece of the summer and the main gateway through to the All-Ireland playoffs, once that's there, it's going to be very, very difficult to get consensus on this.
No, you're scrambling from that point, aren't you? You're getting very creative, and it's very...
Really are. And I've seen some of the proposals and some of the suggestions since that have, been floated by some of my colleagues, and you're looking and say, yeah, that's pretty good. And then, there's flaws in them all. You can pick holes in every one of them. No two championship proposals are the same. They're like snowflakes. They're just different. Everything differs here.
Isn't that the worry in terms of getting anything across the line? That there will be baked in flaws, especially if the provinces have to be involved, and therefore that cohort who don't want change will always have something of an argument or some genuine quibble that they can throw up. And if they are being disingenuous when they say they want change, they'll always have something they can pull out of their back pocket that's a problem with whatever proposal is put forward. And that's the worry.
And if the provincial championships are retained in the way that we think they might, then the 50.6% are likely to vote against that. So, they're likely not to support that change. So it will need real consensus building. I think Kerry and Dublin must be on board for this as the main counties, the most successful counties, and two of those who we think opposed. I think they have a big role to play in where this goes next.
Mickey, I kind of thought there was like a European Super League quality to the Division 1 teams here. The likes of Mayo voting no, the likes of Galway voting no, Kerry not taking a stance, Dublin not taking a stance. Like, there's almost a degree here whereby, we'll go along with this league business as part of the championship. Once we're guaranteed we all make the knockout stages, therefore making the whole thing pointless and undermining the whole idea. Like, there has to be some bit of jeopardy, some bit of risk. If you lose 4 or 5 of your matches, you can't expect to qualify for the next round. And yet here they are. That's what we're surmising, that they don't like this aspect that they may not make the knockout stages. They almost want to guarantee. I don't know. That really bothers me, I have to say. Like, the whole thing is about competition and about going out there and playing other teams and winning matches and earning your right to make the next stages of the competition, and they don't seem to want to know about that. That, for me, that's deeply frustrating. It goes against the whole ethos of what the thing is supposed to be about.
I think so, and I think that's probably what probably would frustrate me too. That if the shoe was on the other foot and it was benefiting them, it might be a different story. But I think to look at the overall system and look at your counties probably from 16 to 32 position in the country, how it could benefit them rather than maybe taking the top cohort and how is it going to benefit us, almost like, as you said, the Super League and probably the silence with the Super League clubs when it came out and probably to a sense with counties in a similar situation, that I think you have to have huge credit or hold a hand up for the likes of Michael Dignan, who stood up and spoke so passionately about it that, you know, there wasn't that fear of maybe going against the grain for what he believed is right as a whole for his county and the GAA, whereas rather than just looking at it from your own individual your individual purpose. So I think that's something, and Colm's mentioned, and he's right, that you have to have the big teams backing whatever proposal is there. But I suppose the reason for the big teams maybe not backing it is that they're benefiting in some shape or form with the structure that's there. And, you know, there's no point in saying it any other way. The certain championships or provincial championships have an easier run than others. And, you know, that's something that maybe some counties aren't willing to give up.
Well, I mean, it's obvious you were talking about Mayo or Coastal.
Made this point from the floor on Saturday. And it was in relation to the sixth team, and this sixth team issue kept on cropping up.
So again, just because I'm conscious, not unlike the delegates, not everybody listening will have read every aspect of this. So Division 1, there would be, is it 8 teams and 5 in Division? So in Division 1,
5 were going through.
Yeah, 8
so
teams.
Five were going through the playoffs.
7 matches
from Division 1.
Yeah.
3 were going through from Division 2, and then the Division 3 and 4 winners were also going through to preliminary quarterfinals. So there was 10 teams from the 4 divisions, scaled 5-3-1-1 going through to All-Ireland playoffs.
So sorry to interrupt. Pick this up then. So the Division 1 concern is we're in Division 1 with 8 teams, only 5 of us go through, and so 3 of us are going to be left behind. So that's the concern of Division 1.
The sixth best team did not go forward, whereas ostensibly the 25th best team, if you'd like to call the Division 4 champions, that they were getting into the playoffs. But Kevin O'Donovan made the point that in hurling, and the same Congress body approved the Joe McDonagh Cup winners to get into a preliminary quarter-final, yet the 4th team in the Leinster and Munster hurling championships didn't get through. But there's a greater fraternity in hurling than there would be in football. They pull each other up. They like to see teams down below them, you know, perform better and do better. And they were willing to make that concession a few years back when the round-robin provincial championships in hurling were introduced, that the Joe McDonagh Cup winners would get into the preliminary quarterfinals in hurling. And that would be at the expense of 2 more mainstream counties, the 4th in Munster and the 4th in Leinster, whose season ended once the round-robin was over.
Yeah. And like to think Division 3 teams, take your team, Mickey, this year, you'd have had to come out atop of Antrim, Fermanagh, Laois, Limerick, Louth, Westmeath and Wicklow just to get into preliminary qualification for the knockout stages. And in the main, it seems like the so-called weaker counties were saying, yeah, we get that. We'll accept that. We have to fight it out just to get that one spot. But there's just a degree of self-interest here which is harming football as a whole, because, Colm, I have to say, and, you know, people will obviously be interested in their own teams, but you just wouldn't look forward to next year's championship with any great sense of excitement. And it's worth reminding people that the Super 8s are gone, so we're kind of back to 2017 levels. So what? It's provincials, a couple of rounds of qualifiers, and then...
Well, I think there's only 2 rounds of qualifiers because the Tailteann Cup is coming in for the first time. The schedule hasn't been released. I believe it's been signed off in the next few weeks. But there's 2 rounds. I think there's 2 rounds of qualifiers because obviously the Division 3 and 4 teams after the provincial championships are diverting to the Tailteann Cup. Now, the Tailteann Cup, it's his first year. Maybe that provides a vision of some future down the road if Proposal B or some variation of Proposal B fails in the next year or so. Maybe this takes a different course. The Tailteann Cup will probably get... Both semi-finals will be standalone football fixtures, I believe, in the first weekend of June, and that will obviously give them a window of opportunity around publicity and all of that. They will be the only football show in town that weekend, and I think the final is probably going to be a curtain raiser for an All-Ireland hurling semi-final later in the month in June. It won't be side by side with the All-Ireland football final, to the best of my knowledge, but that has to be signed off. That was certainly the plan last December before COVID interrupted the championship.
Well, let's get straight down then to business. What are you hearing about Solskjaer's immediate position? Because that's obviously the big issue at the moment, a couple of days on.
That his position is safe for now.
And does for now extend very far beyond the Spurs and Man City games, or not so much?
I don't think a date has been set for sacking him. I know that there's concern, as there would be, because of the results, because of the performances. But the stories yesterday saying that he'd been sacked or was about to be sacked imminently, to my knowledge, are and were inaccurate. And my sources for that information are people I've trusted for a long time, people who are really well placed to give me that information. And maybe they're wrong, but I trusted it enough to be saying to yourselves, for example, and then to other people who I work for. Of course, whether he stays or goes doesn't change the fact that it's been a really bad time for Manchester United. The results in recent weeks and the performances, as I said, have not been good enough at all. There's real concern among the supporters. I was at the ground on Sunday, and it was awful. The fans were pretty supportive right through to the end. Liverpool fans were enjoying every minute, and I'd do the same if I was them. And they were gloating and they were singing, "Ollie, give us a wave, Ollie's at the wheel." And the United fans were obviously very depressed with what they were seeing. I know a lot was made of fans leaving before the end. I'd say that 80% of the fans were there on 80 minutes, but they were pretty horrified at what they'd seen. A week after conceding 4 goals at Leicester City, the team cannot keep a clean sheet at the moment. Individual performances have been way off where they should be. Clearly, most of this is on the manager because he is the manager. He's under intense pressure. It's a very difficult time for him, and he wouldn't expect it to be any different. Conceding 5 and losing 5-0 at home to Liverpool is as bad as it can get for Manchester United.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved